Chapter 945. Chu Yang was speechless. Since when did he have such a nickname? Foppish tyrant's nemesis sounds better. But what's with the ghost killer? Am I a ghost or a ghost killer? Chu Yang stopped and took a look. He saw a group of people in snow-white robes and a chilly aura. Hundreds of people walked over silently. Their robes were as white as snow, and their swords were like silver. Chu Yang's pupils shrank. These people did not need to speak. Just by looking at them, Chu Yang could feel the chilly aura coming from them. And every one of them was an expert. The weakest among them was a monarch-level expert. There were many martial saints. And the few people walking in the middle of the group looked very young. But with every step they took, it was as if the whole world was moving along with them. This was the realm of Greater Virtual Realm. Supreme Martial Artist. And the two people at the front were a man and a woman. The man was handsome, and the woman was beautiful. The man's face seemed to be filled with inexplicable sorrow. And the woman's face also seemed to never smile. Just by looking at her, one could tell that she was unapproachable. And this woman, Chu Yang actually knew her. Ling clan. Ling Han Shui. It seemed that these people were from the Ling clan, one of the dominant clans in the heavens. Zi Xieching was also looking at these few people. She looked at the man who was walking in front and said in admiration, "This man should be less than 50 years old. I didn't expect him to have the cultivation of a 7th-grade martial saint. Although there are traces of him forcefully using medicine to raise his cultivation, it's still very rare for him to have such cultivation at such a young age. He can be said to be an unparalleled genius." Chu Yang was stunned. "So hi. I'm definitely not wrong," Zi Xieching said lightly. "This woman is also only 28 years old. But she's already a first-stage martial saint. Her aptitude is not inferior to that man's at all. But it's a pity that she's actually trained in Heartless. This kind of martial art is faster than any other martial art. But once you fall in love, you'll be doomed eternally. How did such a beautiful woman, at such a young age, learn such martial arts?" Chu Yang's heart shook. He remembered Ling Hanshue's indifferent attitude back at the Lake of Despair. She did not care about anything at all. There was also a moment of extreme pain in her eyes. If one's heart isn't as dead as ashes, who would seal their heart? Chu Yang sighed and said. Zi Xieching murmured, "You are right. If one's heart is not dead and there is no more hope, who would seal their heart and be heartless?" As she said that, she could not help but ask herself, "Am I considered heartless?" While they were talking, those people had already arrived. The man in the lead, who was as handsome as jade, smiled and said, "You must be Duke Chu, the one who has killed and enforced justice on behalf of the heavens." Ling Han Shui, who was standing at the side, looked at Chu Yang's face with an icy gaze. She said with some surprise, "It's you." She had seen Chu Yang at the Three Heavens Lake of Despair before. He didn't expect to see him here again. "My surname is indeed Chu." Chu Yang smiled and replied, "Miss Ling, we meet again." Ling Han Shui said lightly, "I remember that your name is Chu Yang. Aren't you in Three Heavens? Why are we in the upper Three Heavens? After the battle on that day, the heavenly layer was sealed. How did you come up? Why?" Although she sounded like she was asking, the feeling that she gave off was still as cold as ice. Although Chu Yang knew her temper, he was still a little unhappy. He said, "Miss Ling must have remembered wrongly. After the battle, the upper Three Heavens was sealed for more than half a month." Ling Han Shui replied with an "oh" and said, "Then you must have entered within this half a month. I took it for granted." Her words were still cold, but she was apologizing. The man in white beside her smiled bitterly and said, "Duke Chu, please don't be offended. This niece of mine is just like this. Sigh, even when she is talking to her father and me, she is still so cold. We can't do anything about it." Ling Han Shui was a little angry. Second uncle. Chu Yang finally understood. This Miss Ling was still cold, even when she was angry. And the person she was talking to now was her second uncle. It seemed that it was really caused by the heavens. Suddenly, he remembered something that 7th Master Xiao had said when he was fighting with Yi Wu Bing. At that time, 7th Master Xiao said, "Am I wrong? Your sister Yi Chuchen was originally in love with Meng Yin, a vassal clan of your Yi clan. But in order to form an alliance with the Ling clan, you forcefully separated the two of them. You wanted your sister to marry Ling Hanwu, the second duke of the Ling clan. Second duke. Second uncle. Wasn't the second duke of that time the current generation? Chu Yang remembered clearly that 7th Master Xiao even said, Yi Chuchen would rather die than submit. Meng Gein was deeply in love with her. Ling Hanwu was still a man, and took the initiative to withdraw. Could this man be Ling Hanwu? Chu Yang asked tentatively. Elder, you don't have to be so polite. I am indeed Chu Yang. May I know how to address you? The white-robed old man smiled faintly. Although he was smiling, there was a hint of worry between his brows that couldn't be erased. He said calmly, I am Ling Hanwu Schwerer's second uncle. Chu Yang finally confirmed his conjecture. It's really this person. He couldn't help but be shocked. This person was Teacher's love rival. It was because of this person that Teacher's whole family was killed, and he was left stranded in the lower 3 heavens. However, this Ling Hanwu was also innocent in this matter. Because he was completely unaware of the Yi clan's plans, he also took the initiative to withdraw in the end to allowing Shuran and Yi Chuchen to be together. He could be considered a man of character. Chu Yang's heart suddenly felt a little complicated. He smiled and said, So it's second Master Ling then. He suddenly paused and said, Oh, something's not right. Ling Hanwu chuckled. My niece's name was changed by her teacher, so it became weird. It sounds as if she's of the same generation as us. But she's a girl after all, so it doesn't matter. Actually, my niece's original name was Ling Yurua. Her name wasn't given according to her seniority. Haha. Chu Yang said with relief, I see. Ling Hanshua said coldly, Second uncle. You'd better not bring me along when you talk to others. Ling Hanwu didn't take it to heart and laughed. Little Shue be good. I'm just saying. Ling Hanshua frowned and walked to one side. Ling Hanwu laughed and said, Is Duke Chu also going to participate in the medicine banquet? Why don't we travel together? Chu Yang said, If that's the case, thank you very much. We don't have many people, so there's really a lot of trouble along the way. Ling Hanwu smiled and said, However, you've also killed a lot of people along the way. Do you know, ever since you killed the first debauchee, I've instructed people to pay attention to your movements. After that, every time you killed someone, there would be an eagle message to me. As he said, he took out a piece of paper from his bosom, dipped it in his saliva and counted it. Then he laughed and said, Good fellow. You've killed a total of 70 people along the way. And this doesn't include the 5 people you killed yesterday. Chu Yang smiled and said, With a sword in hand, I'll kill all the evildoers in the world. Good. Ling Hanwu shouted and repeated this sentence twice. With a sword in hand, I'll kill all the evildoers in the world. With a sword in hand, I'll kill all the evildoers in the world. Suddenly he shouted, Bring the wine. Just for this sentence, I'm going to drink 3 cups of wine for you. You and I don't know each other, but for you to say this sentence, I like it. I'm pleasing to the eye. The group had already stopped. A white-robed man came over with a wine bag and 2 wine bowls on a tray. I'll do it personally. Ling Hanwu stopped that person from pouring the wine. He personally poured 2 cups of strong wine from the wine bag and held up a bowl. Chu Yang, come, let's drink this cup of wine. Chu Yang smiled from the bottom of his heart. Good. Without being pretentious, he held up the big bowl and drank all the wine. Ling Hanwu looked at him with shining eyes and laughed. Good. Refreshing. Again. The 2 of them held up the wine bowls and drank 3 bowls in a row. They looked at each other and laughed at the same time. Refreshing. Ling Hanwu said, You've killed these people well. And the way you killed them is even better. I like it. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. He rubbed his nose and looked at Zi Xiecheng. He thought, So this guy actually admires such methods so much. In your generation, there's another person like this. As long as he sees someone who bullies others, he will definitely kill them quickly. That person is also the person I admire the most in the younger generation. He's the flower protector Meng Hanwu. Chu Yang made a no sound and thought, I can totally guess this. Ling Hanwu held up the wine bowl and said in a reminiscing tone, When I was young, I was also like all of you. Alone and with a sword, I roamed the martial world and killed young ruffians. For 10 years, I killed a total of 1,300 of them. 1,300 of them, who bullied others and bullied others. Not including their subordinates. Chu Yang calculated in his heart and said, "Then you've killed at least 10,000 people. 10,000 ruffians." Ling Hanwu shook his head. "No, there were many clans that were wiped out by me. In those 10 years I killed at least 30,000 people. At that time, as long as I heard about it, I would take the initiative to kill them. If they didn't comply, I would kill their entire families." He smiled bitterly. "In those 10 years, I was called the cold-blooded butcher. Sometimes I would travel 1,000 miles in a day and kill 3 clans in a row. It was only when the clans sent people to capture me that I stopped killing." Chu Yang laughed and probed. "Elder, did you suffer any injuries at that time?" Ling Hanwu's eyes widened, as if he was about to fly into a rage. Then he smiled bitterly. "Everyone knows that I, Ling Hanwu, suffered no injuries. Why do you have to probe?" "That's right. I did it for Sister Yi Chuchen of the Yi clan." Chu Yang's heart thumped heavily. After saying that, Ling Hanwu fell into a daze. His face was filled with reminiscence, frustration, and bitterness. He shook his head and said, "What's the use of being deeply in love? What's the use of being laughed at by the world? A woman's heart is not with you. No matter how powerful you are, you can't snatch it away. So, those who force women should be killed the most. Killing even their ancestors is the best. Letting them see the regret of not having any descendants is the real punishment. That's what's satisfying." Thank you to AXHHG, Alliance Master, for the 4th time. YYYHHY, you've done a lot for me this month. Thank you very much. Thank you to Long Inua, Alliance Master, for the tip in the wee hours. Thank you. Thank you to Lu Jinyo, Alliance Master, for the tip in the wee hours. When I opened the book review section and saw it, I felt really warm in my heart. Especially that sentence, "I'll treat you to a drink." It warmed my heart for a long time. Thank you to Weasel22, for the tip in the wee hours again. Thank you to Wei Qingqiu Ben Feng Lan, Become God or Crazy Demon McDull, for the tip. Chapter 946. Chu Yang was full of praise for this sentence. He said, "That's right. What can they do when they do evil? It's just that their clans are supporting them. Without the power of their clans, these people's lives are worse than dogs. Every playboy's lust is only lust at first, but because of the indulgence of their clans and the flattery of their subordinates, slowly, it becomes a matter of course. If anyone says that there's actually a group of righteous elders behind these evil people, I'll spit on his face." Ling Hanwu clapped his hands and praised. "Well said. So to kill a playboy, we have to destroy his entire nest. Get rid of him from the root. Whoever is the playboy's protective umbrella, kill him." Chu Yang laughed heartily, feeling that these words were simply said to his heart's content. He said, "But why did you do that for those 10 years? Ling Hanwu laughed with a strong sense of self-mockery. He said, "You're not an outsider, so there's no harm in me telling you." The two of them walked forward with the group. Ling Hanwu ordered a white horse to be given to Chu Yang. The two of them rode side by side and talked along the way. On the other side, Zi Xieching and Ling Hanxue were also talking. Zi Xieching and Chu Luo were together with Ling Hanxue. One had to admit that Zi Xieching was as cold as ice, unapproachable. Ling Hanxue was even more like an iceberg. When the two of them walked together, they attracted too much attention, but also froze many people. It was too cold. The conversation between the two of them was even more frighteningly cold. No matter whether it was their expressions, eyes, or faces, they were all extremely cold. Although the content was ordinary, the tone was so cold that it could freeze people. "Miss, what's your surname?" Ling Hanxue asked coldly. Zi Xieching said lightly. The journey was tough." Ling Hanxue asked. "Not bad," Zi Xieching said. "Many young ruffians? You made a move?" Ling Hanxue asked. "What do you think?" Zi Xieching asked coldly. "I can't tell your cultivation," Ling Hanxue said. "It's average," Zi Xieching said. The two of them were cold in their questions and cold in their replies, but they were never tired of it. It was as if they had found an opponent, or as if they were competing to see who could dispel the other's indifference first. Thus, the two of them chatted along the way. Those who rarely saw the two ice beauties talking were curious, and moved closer to listen. However, when they heard it, they shuddered and tried to avoid it. Such cold words sent chills down the spines of those who heard it. They felt the bone-chilling cold of the 12th lunar month. Even the 4 supreme-level experts who had been acting as protectors along the way had also quietly distanced themselves from them. 2 female perverts. Everyone cursed inwardly. The 2 people at the front of the group were talking nonstop. The 2 of them had too many topics in common. Why am I not an outsider? Chu Yang was a little surprised. Isn't this the first time we've met? How is he not an outsider? Ling Hanwu smiled lightly and said, after Meng Gein returned to the upper 3 heavens, the first thing he did was to look for me. Chu Yang's spirit shook. My master? Where is he now? Humph. Ling Hanwu said fiercely. Little brat. If your master didn't tell me that he had a disciple like you, do you think I would treat you to a drink just because we met by chance? Do you think it's so easy to drink my wine? Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He smiled bitterly and said, I've been presumptuous. I thought we fell in love at first sight. Love at first sight. Ling Hanwu almost fell off his horse. His eyes were as wide as a bull's. You're just like what your master said. You look simple and honest on the surface, but you're actually very cunning in your heart. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. No, your master was wrong too. You don't look simple and honest on the surface either. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But those who have met me all say that I'm honest, pure and flawless, with a face full of sincerity, full of good fortune. Stop. Ling Hanwu broke out in cold sweat. Could it be that I've got the wrong person? Are you Chu Yang or Tan Tan? Chu Yang was finally sure that Ling Hanwu had really met his master Meng Chaoran. Otherwise he wouldn't know so clearly. Knowing that he was Meng Chaoran's younger brother didn't make things difficult for him at all. But even Tan Tan knew about it. Where's my master now? Chu Yang asked anxiously. I killed him. Ling Hanwu rolled his eyes. Chu Yang's face darkened. You really took it seriously? Ling Hanwu snorted. Do you believe that I'll smack your butt on behalf of your master? Chu Yang said lightly. I don't like to joke, especially when it comes to my master. The 2 of them stared at each other without blinking. Ling Hanwu finally sighed. All right, I'll take it that I'm afraid of you, master and disciple. I won't joke about your master. Seeing Chu Yang's determination now, it was as if he saw Meng Gein standing in front of him, as stubborn and unyielding as before. Chu Yang broke into a smile and said, in everyone's life, there are always a few people who can't be violated, who can't be ridiculed, who must be protected even at the cost of his life. And these people are usually called the person's bottom line. As the saying goes, a dragon has a reverse scale. Touching it will make it angry. People with a bottom line. Ling Hanwu said softly. You all have such people in your heart. Then who are the people you can insult the most? Chu Yang said proudly. My master, my parents, my brothers, my woman. He smiled lightly, his eyes revealing a sharp determination. Whoever dares to offend them will die without a doubt. So many. Ling Hanwu laughed bitterly. Apart from my family, there's only one person I can't offend. But that person still doesn't belong to me. When I mention her, I can only use her to describe her. I can't use the word mine. Chu Yang was silent. He knew that he was talking about Yi Chuchen, but Chu Yang didn't want to say anything about this. Because that was his master's beloved, Chu Yang was rather curious. That Yi Chuchen, what kind of woman was she? She actually made these 2 men go crazy for her. Meng Chaoran was calm and composed. Even if the heavens collapsed, he might not be moved. And Ling Hanwu, as the second duke of a dominant clan, was above everyone else. How revered was his status? And yet, he was so infatuated with Yi Chuchen. Back then your master, Chuchen, and I grew up together. I was the same age as your master, and Chuchen was younger than both of us. At that time, the Ling clan and the Yi clan were on very good terms, and they were even in-laws. My aunt was the wife of the Yi clan master. I often went over to play, and when I did, I would stay for a few months. Everyone slowly grew up, and I also fell in love with Chuchen. One day, when my family told me that they wanted to arrange a marriage for me, I mentioned Chuchen's name without hesitation. Only then did I know that it was the Yi clan who brought up this matter. I went to the Yi clan ecstatically, found Chuchen and told her about it. But I saw that she had lost a lot of weight. She told me that the person she liked was not me, but Meng Gein. At that time, I really wanted to kill Meng Gein. But Chuchen begged me to let them go. I Ling Hanwu, am also a proud person. How could I accept a woman who didn't like me to be my wife? The whole world knew that I was deeply in love with Yi Chuchen. But she was in love with Meng Gein, and didn't care about me at all. Even if I forcefully got her, what was the use? So I gave up. Haha. Ling Hanwu laughed loudly, but his voice was full of desolation. Then he laughed bitterly and said, "But after I gave up that time, I knew that the pain was unbearable. Only then did I know what it meant to be heartbroken. I wandered aimlessly in the martial world, not knowing what I was doing. Then, I heard that the Yi clan was furious because of this matter. The Yi clan master forced his daughter to agree, but Chuchen would rather die than comply. Because of this, she actually committed suicide once. So I rushed back to tell the Yi clan that I gave up on my own accord, and it had nothing to do with them. But when I arrived, it was already too late. In order to cut off Chuchen's thoughts, the Yi clan actually mobilized an army to besiege the Meng clan. Chuchen knelt in front of me and begged me to save Meng Gein. So I went. But with my strength alone, who could I save? By the time I arrived, the entire Meng clan was already dead. Only Meng Gein was still alive, but the knife immediately fell on his neck. I used my identity as a member of the Ling clan and forcibly took Meng Gein away, but Meng Gein was still assassinated by them. I escorted Meng Gein to escape. Before I left, I let the two of them meet. I kept watch. At this point, Ling Hanwu laughed bitterly. My most beloved woman met her lover, and I, who loved her deeply, kept watch outside. Keep watch. Haha. Chu Yang sighed softly. This kind of feeling was probably what made one wish for death the most, right? As the second duke of the Ling clan, Ling Hanwu put in so much effort to help the person he loved. This was extremely rare. Meng Gein escaped in the middle of the night and disappeared without a trace. Chuchen washed her face with tears and was heartbroken. At that time, I wanted to kill that old fool from the Yi clan. If he hadn't forced me, would this have happened? If I wanted to kill the person who forced Chuchen, I would have to kill her father. If I killed him, she would be sad, so I couldn't kill him. So I went to kill others. I specialized in killing those who force women. Every time I killed someone, I would think in my heart that I had killed that old bastard from the Yi clan again. So the more I killed, the more energetic I became. Just like that, I killed for 10 years. And because of this, the relationship between the two clans also became awkward. Ling Hanwu laughed bitterly. I practiced with all my might, used all kinds of methods to improve myself, and tried to forget her. But in the end, I couldn't do it. I understand, Chu Yang said deeply. Your master has changed his name to Meng Chaoran, right? Ling Hanwu laughed. The moment he reached the upper three heavens, he came to find me and said bluntly, I want to see Yi Chuchen. Ah. Chu Yang didn't expect his master to be so direct and fierce. He was actually so direct in front of his love rival. Do you know what his second sentence was? Ling Hanwu gritted his teeth. What? Chu Yang asked. Chapter 947. But you still went to keep a lookout in the end. Chu Yang smiled and touched his nose. I did it for Chuchen. Do you think I did it for Meng Gein? Ling Hanwu almost jumped up in rage. He glared at Chu Yang. Your mouth is as hateful as your teacher's. In that case, the two of them have already met. Chu Yang was a little relieved. Ling Hanwu said angrily. Of course. What about now? Chu Yang asked tentatively. Are they still together? Still together? Ling Hanwu was furious. It's good enough that they've met once. You still want them to be together? Meng Gein has left. I don't know where he went. Yi Chuchen has gone home. Ling Hanwu obviously didn't want to talk about this topic. Every word he said about Meng Chaoran and Yi Chuchen being together was like a knife cutting his heart. In other words, they're fine? They weren't discovered? Chu Yang was relieved and beamed with joy. What nonsense. With me keeping a lookout, what can happen? Ling Hanwu almost vomited blood. No wonder. Chu Yang nodded. That bastard Meng Gein's cultivation isn't as good as mine. His family background isn't as good as mine. His looks aren't as good as mine either. But he's more popular with women than me, Ling Hanwu said gloomily. I've thought about this for 20 years and still can't figure it out. Chu Yang said sympathetically. I can't figure it out either. So until now you've been a bachelor? Ling Hanwu's face twisted. What do you mean by a bachelor? Junior, you should be more polite. I'm keeping my chastity for the sake of my love and never marry. Isn't that still a bachelor? Chu Yang rolled his eyes and muttered softly. Ling Hanwu rolled his eyes and changed the topic. Junior, are you going to the medicine banquet this time? I heard that you're a pharmacist? And a candidate chosen by Han Sharan from the southeast? Chu Yang nodded conceitedly and said, I've promised Law Enforcement Master Han that I'll win first place in this medicine banquet. Ling Hanwu's face turned ugly. Win first place. Chu Yang smiled lightly. It's a small matter. Ling Hanwu looked at Chu Yang with eyes as big as copper bells. It looked like he wanted to swallow Chu Yang whole. Winning first place in one go was actually a small matter? You've got guts. Ling Hanwu nodded fiercely. Your teacher is right. You do have guts. Chu Yang chuckled and said, Uncle, I won't hide it from you. In my eyes, those pharmacists of your big clans are just like trash. This time, against those trash, the chances of winning can't be said to be 100%. But it's still 100% certain. Ling Hanwu's face turned purple. Like a good-for-nothing? Trash. Chu Yang smiled conceitedly and said, It's a little too much to say this, but it's true that I can't go that far. I reckon that my main opponent is the High Priest of the Medicine Valley, or rather. Speaking till here, Chu Yang sized up the Ling clan's team. Seeing that everyone in the Ling clan was wearing the same clothes, he really couldn't tell which one was the pharmacist. He asked, Uncle, who is the pharmacist of your Ling clan? Ling Hanwu was so angry that he laughed. The pharmacist of our Ling clan? That good-for-nothing guy? A piece of trash. Chu Yang laughed. Uncle, what are you talking about? Although he's definitely not as good as me, he can still handle normal situations. Ling Hanwu closed his eyes and took 2 deep breaths. Then, he opened his eyes and pointed a finger at his own nose. He said, The useless person of the Ling clan that you're talking about is me. Chu Yang's mouth opened wide and he couldn't close it. I'm that useless person. Ling Hanwu roared. His voice was a little loud and everyone heard it at once. In an instant there was complete silence. Pairs of bewildered eyes looked over. They really didn't know what was wrong with their second master, to call him a useless person so openly. Zi Xieching, who was talking to Ling Hanxue, couldn't help but laugh. With her cultivation she naturally heard it clearly. Chu Yang was extremely embarrassed. He laughed and said, So it's Uncle. Cough cough, Uncle is really knowledgeable and well-versed in everything. Ling Hanwu glared at him. How can a useless person like me be considered knowledgeable and well-versed? Chu Yang laughed again. Actually, although it's autumn, it's still very hot. Haha. Uncle, your Ling clan has come really early this time. A whole half a year in advance? Ling Hanwu took a few breaths and couldn't help but laugh. Fuck your teacher. You're much more cunning than your teacher. Chu Yang grinned and said, The student surpasses the master. Everyone says so. Ling Hanwu shook his head and laughed. A good person can also fall ill from anger after talking to you for a while. Alright, let's not talk about this. There's naturally a reason why I'm here early. Chu Yang had a flash of inspiration. My teacher's wife will be here too? Ling Hanwu said angrily. Nonsense. We're not married yet. You can only call her Miss Yi. Chu Yang immediately followed his advice. A Miss Yi will be here too? Ling Hanwu was still angry. Of course. Otherwise, why would I rush here? Then my teacher will definitely be here secretly. Chu Yang was happy, thinking that he hadn't seen his teacher for a long time. He couldn't help but miss him. Ling Hanwu, however, was immersed in the past again. He murmured, When I was young, I often watched the snow with Chuchen. She likes snow, so do I. When I grew up, my biggest wish was to be able to watch the snow with her. Just the two of us. Unfortunately, this wish has never been realized. I don't care whether the medicine banquet is a banquet or not. I also don't care about being the #1 doctor. I just want to use this opportunity to fulfill this wish of mine. Even if it's just standing together, not saying a word, and immediately going home after watching the snow. It's also good. Ling Hanwu said sadly. Chu Yang quietened down. At this moment he really didn't know what to say. This guy coveted his teacher's wife. He should really kick him away. But at this moment, Chu Yang only felt sad. This infatuated man only wanted to watch the snow with the person he loved the most in his life. The sound of horse hooves was heard, and the road was left behind. What exactly is this medicine banquet about? Chu Yang asked. The medicine banquet is a grand event of the heavens. Ling Hanwu said. It's held once every 1,000 years. And it's only held once every 10,000 years. The big clans hold it once. During the medicine banquet, all the big clans present all their elixirs to participate in the banquet. They refine 10,000 different elixirs into a special heaven-nourishing jade. The Dharma Supreme and 8 Supreme Martial Artist experts fill this heaven-nourishing jade into the missing parts of the heavens to stabilize the stability of the heavens. This is a rather sacred ceremony. Although it has gradually become a bit of a scramble for fame and fortune over the years, this purpose has never changed. Chu Yang nodded silently. I see. Then, what are the benefits of being the champion of the medicine banquet? There aren't any benefits, just the title of the #1 doctor in the world. Also, there will be a small piece of the heaven-nourishing jade left, and this small piece will belong to the champion. Other than that, he can take any 10 types of elixirs that appear in the medicine banquet. Of course, the most important thing is, the champion will receive a special honor, and that is the status of a law enforcement officer. A law enforcement officer's status is equivalent to that of a law enforcement master. Among the law enforcement officers, he's also extremely respected. With such a status, he can do whatever he wants in the heavens. Ling Hanwu sighed a little bleakly. But all these are meaningless to me. Chu Yang nodded silently and calculated these things. The effects of the heaven-nourishing jade must be extraordinary. Taking any 10 types of elixirs would also be a great temptation. These things would be a great supplement for Tribulation Sword. As for being a law enforcement officer's guest, that should be Han Sharon's biggest hope for him. If he became a law enforcement officer's guest, then Han Sharon's purge would be much smoother. After all, no one would want to offend the #1 doctor in the world, who hasn't been hurt before. As for being a law enforcement officer's guest, that was an even more noble status. Ling Hanwu muttered to himself. If anyone here can develop a medicine that can make a woman fall in love with a man wholeheartedly, I'll fight for a championship even if I have to risk my life. Chu Yang sighed. Infatuation was very pitiful, especially when it was an unintentional infatuation between a man and a woman. Ling Hanwu, as the duke of a dominating clan, was impeccable in terms of appearance, talent, character, cultivation, and family background. But he just had to fall in love with Yi Chuchen, who didn't like him. This was really a tragedy. As a doctor, you have to prepare a stock of elixir for the preliminary round of the medicine banquet. Ling Hanwu woke up from his thoughts and said, What kind of elixir have you prepared? This round is guarded by the Medicine Valley, and it's extremely strict. I'm afraid ordinary elixirs can't pass. There's such a thing? Chu Yang asked humbly. Then, what kind of elixir have you prepared? Ling Hanwu said, I've prepared it casually. It's an 8,000-year-old lotus of will. Although it's not very good, it's more than enough to enter the preliminary round. What about you? Chu Yang muttered. I only know about it now. I haven't thought of what to use. Ling Hanwu said angrily, Han Sharon is so irresponsible. He didn't prepare anything for you. As he said, he sighed and said, It's no wonder. Han Sharon has been upright and plain-spoken all these years, and he hasn't profited from anything. Just based on his poor appearance, he may not be able to come up with anything good. Forget it, I'll prepare one for you then. Chu Yang said, Thank you, uncle. But I have one here. I don't need to trouble you. Ling Hanwu looked at him helplessly and said, All right, if it doesn't work, I'll change it for you. He thought to himself, Young people are thin-skinned. I'll just prepare one more for him. In the Zhuge clan, Diwu Qingru was pruning a stalk of osmanthus, looking carefree. Chapter 948. Diwu Qingru sighed. This brother of his didn't have much ability. He didn't practice martial arts. But he thought himself smart, and was good at currying favor. Relying on the identity of the Diwu clan, he became an external attendant of the Zhuge clan. Diwu Qingru had never liked this person, but Diwu Qingyan always came to discuss everything with him. And no matter what Diwu Qingru thought, Diwu Qingru would go out with Diwu Qingru's name. It was really annoying. Sometimes, Diwu Qingru even wanted to just evaporate this little guy, but after thinking about it, he still didn't do it. The Diwu clan had already withered to such a state. If there were internal strife, it would really be beyond redemption. Moreover, the entire clan was covered by the supreme martial artist's divine senses from morning till night. It wasn't easy to be undetected this time. He finally had some free time, and this guy came again. Diwu Qingru really didn't know what was bothering him this time. He had no choice but to say, "I'm here, come in." With a creak, Diwu Qingyan pushed open the door and entered. Diwu Qingru looked up and saw that Diwu Qingyan's face was full of anger. He couldn't help but frown. "What's the matter?" Diwu Qingyan said in a panic. "Qingru, something big has happened this time. Do you know my in-laws? The one from North Wind Town." Diwu Qingru said lightly. "The one with the surname Sun? What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Diwu Qingyan sighed and said. "They were killed. Their whole family was killed. Not a single one was left alive." Diwu Qingru said lightly. "Oh." Diwu Qingyan said. "It's said that the person who killed him has a strong background. And this time, he came here to participate in the medicine banquet. He was chosen by the law enforcement master of the southeast region, Han Xiaoran." Diwu Qingru trimmed the osmanthus flowers patiently. He looked left and right, then stretched out his scissors and said lightly, "You want to take revenge? You want to avenge your in-laws?" Diwu Qingyan said, "No matter what, he's my in-laws. Moreover, once he's gone, it's equivalent to losing a source of income for me. How can I not take revenge?" "You want to take revenge, but you don't want to get into trouble. But the other party has a strong background. So you want me to give you an idea?" Diwu Qingru's hands were very steady. His eyes were carefully observing the bouquet that needed to be trimmed, but his mouth was clearly analyzing. "That's right," Diwu Qingyan said anxiously. "Qingru, only you can help me this time. Only someone like you, who can devise strategies and divine schemes, can kill that little one without anyone noticing. Since he came to participate in the medicine banquet, he must be a doctor." Diwu Qingru said nonchalantly. "What's his name? What's his cultivation?" "This person is surnamed Chu. His name is Chu Yang. He is a sword." Before Diwu Qingyan could finish his sentence, a cracking sound was heard. Diwu Qingru had actually cut off an entire osmanthus flower. Then the scissors fell to the ground with a thud. The expression on Diwu Qingru's face was also very strange. There was shock, confusion, memories, disbelief, and even too much pleasant surprise. But in an instant, it returned to its original state. "Qingru." Diwu Qingyan was shocked. He dared to swear that he had never seen Diwu Qingru's complexion change like today's. "I'm fine." Diwu Qingru bent down and picked up the scissors. But he didn't trim the bouquet anymore. Instead, he frowned and thought about something. He personally planted, cultivated, and reshaped the osmanthus flower that he had taken care of for so many years. But he didn't seem to care about it at all. Diwu Qingyan didn't dare to disturb him, so he stood aside and waited. Diwu Qingru thought for a while, and threw the scissors away. He raised his hand and put it in front of his eyes, saying, "My hand is a bit too clean during this period of time. It's a bit slippery." Diwu Qingyan blinked his eyes in confusion. "Hand too clean? Will it be slippery if the hand is too clean?" Diwu Qingru looked at his hand for a while. Then he slowly walked up and put his hands behind his back. His expression was indifferent. He didn't say a word for a long time. "Qingru, what should we do about this?" Diwu Qingyan said anxiously. "Give me an idea." Diwu Qingru was about to speak, but he suddenly turned around and asked, "You said he's a sword. What sword?" "Sword Emperor." "It's said that he's a sword emperor." Diwu Qingyan was a bit flustered. "His cultivation isn't low. And he's a special pharmacist envoy appointed by the law enforcement master of the southeast region." The corner of Diwu Qingru's eyes twitched imperceptibly. He muttered, "Sword Emperor? Sword Emperor. What's his cultivation?" Diwu Qingyan was stunned. "Qingru, are you confused? First, there's an emperor, then there's a monarch. After transcending mortality, one will become a saint. The sword is the most respected in the universe. This is the way of the sword. You, are you pretending to be confused? Diwu Qingrou's eyebrows twitched slightly. He said, "Oh, a sword emperor after the sword emperor. Great." His words were exceptionally forceful. Then his expression returned to normal. He said calmly, "This person is very young, right? What does he look like?" "Very young, definitely less than 20 years old. And he's very handsome," Diwu Qingyan said energetically. "Very young, less than 20 years old sword emperor. Great," Diwu Qingrou said softly. His eyes finally lit up for real. At this moment, there seemed to be a star in Diwu Qingrou's eyes that shone intensely. Then he smiled slightly. "It's just a sword emperor. Don't tell me you can't deal with him?" Diwu Qingyan was angry and anxious. "If it's a normal situation, I'll find a few people and fake in order to mobilize the experts of the Zhuge clan. But now, it's the preparation period for the medicine banquet. All the experts have their own duties. I can't find a chance even if I find one." Diwu Qingrou's eyes lit up again. He said, "If so, you can do this." He pondered for a moment and said, "I think that this kind of thing can only be done by your own trusted subordinates." Diwu Qingyan stomped his feet and said, "You're joking. The highest level among my trusted subordinates is a 5th-stage monarch. I spent a lot of effort to win him over. But how can a 5th-stage monarch deal with a 5th-stage sword emperor?" Diwu Qingrou frowned and said, "I have a plan." "Say it." Diwu Qingyan became spirited. Such a young sword emperor must have borrowed the power of medicine. Diwu Qingrou said slowly. "That's right. Definitely," Diwu Qingyan said affirmatively. "Otherwise, even if he started practicing when he was in his mother's womb, he wouldn't be able to reach this stage." "That's right," Diwu Qingrou said. "All those who improve with the help of medicine are very sensitive to medicine. Such people are most afraid of poison. And this person is young, so he probably doesn't have much experience in the martial world. So? Diwu Qingyan looked at him eagerly. "So, you're in charge of welcoming guests and arranging their meals and lodging in the Zhuge clan." Diwu Qingrou's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He said, "Which room he stays in, what food he eats, what wine he drinks and what furniture he uses. You know all of them. They're all arranged by you. Do you understand?" "Understood. You mean you want me to poison him?" Diwu Qingyan's eyes lit up. "Poison must be done cleverly, and without leaving any traces. It's best if it's a mixed poison." Diwu Qingrou continued to give ideas. "Yes," Diwu Qingyan nodded repeatedly. "As a pharmacist, you can distinguish mixed poisons. So if he comes, arrange for him to stay in the Orchard Palace. There are heavenly fragrant orchids there. They're blooming all year round, and have a faint fragrance that can cover all the smell of poisons." Diwu Qingrou paced 3 steps and said softly, "Okay." Diwu Qingyan's eyes became brighter and brighter. "Finally, give it to me after you find the mixed poison. I will use my 10,000 miles waft of fragrance, Orchid's heart-chasing soul, to stimulate this mixed poison for you. This will make it even more thoroughly blend into the orchid fragrance," Diwu Qingrou said softly. "Great." Diwu Qingyan got more excited as he listened. "Of course you have to be careful. Don't use too much poison. If it's too heavy, it'll be easily discovered. It's best if the mixed poison can only make experts unconscious. Yes, the mixed poison of noon fragrance and orchid heartgrass is the best." Diwu Qingrou continued to give suggestions. "Great. I happen to have such a mixed poison." Diwu Qingyan clapped his hands excitedly. "If you don't have it, I won't tell you." Diwu Qingrou thought to himself and continued. "As long as he shows signs of instability after being poisoned, you'll take action immediately. Because this kind of poison can only make the Sword Emperor unconscious for 2 hours at most. You have to calculate the time well. Of course, not to mention 2 hours. Even if it's just a blink of an eye, I can chop off his head 8 times." Diwu Qingyan was relieved and laughed. Diwu Qingrou said, "You only want to kill? You don't want to vent your anger? Isn't it letting him off too easily if you just kill him with 1 strike?" "That's true. In your opinion, what should I do?" Diwu Qingyan asked. Diwu Qingru smiled faintly and said, "If I want to take revenge, I'll show myself and tell him my name, my identity, and what he did wrong. Then, I'll let him beg for mercy. You'll pretend to agree. And when he's happy, you'll suddenly take his life." "That's so satisfying." Diwu Qingyan clapped his hands and gave him a thumbs up. "Qingru, you're really a think tank and an ancestor of scheming." Diwu Qingru's eyes flickered slightly and said, "But you have to be careful now and do it secretly. Other than your closest and most trusted subordinates, don't let anyone else know. Otherwise, if the clan knows that you actually dared to murder a guest during the medicine banquet, you can only go back home and farm." Diwu Qingyan said with dissatisfaction, "Look at what you're saying. I'm not stupid." Chapter 949. Well, you're indeed not stupid. Diwu Qingru's gaze was a little complicated. He looked at Diwu Qingyan and said softly, "Qingyan, the Sun clan was killed because of their evil deeds. It's their retribution." He pondered for a while and said, "And you, as far as I know, you've done a lot of evil deeds these years. Although you're not as evil as the Sun clan, you're still hated to the core. You should know that you'll be punished if you do too many evil deeds. It's okay if you give up this revenge." Diwu Qingru struggled to say these few words. It was slightly different from his usual smoothness. Diwu Qingyan laughed and said, "It's okay. Qingru, I always do things through my subordinates. Besides, your little tricks are also very vicious. Every time I do something, you'll deal with my subordinates and kill them. That time, you even caught me and gave me 100 beatings." He smiled and said, "But I like this. I won't blame you even if you beat me and kill my subordinates. You can find me again after you kill me. But this time, don't blame me, and don't stop me. My concubine is the youngest daughter of the Sun clan. She's crying and throwing tantrums at me. I can't take it anymore. If this goes on, I won't be able to live. So I have to kill this person." "Have to kill? Well, you have to kill him." Diwu Qingru nodded lightly and said softly, "Since you have to kill him, then kill him." "Of course I have to kill him." Diwu Qingyan snorted and said, "Qingru, thank you for coming up with an idea for me this time. This time, that little girl is really dead. But I can't keep it a secret alone. You have to keep it a secret for me. If this spreads out, I'm really finished." Diwu Qingru nodded deeply and said, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Diwu Qingyan left in a relaxed manner. Only Diwu Qingru was left standing in his own courtyard in a daze. He stood for a long time before he sat down slowly. He picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea. He took a sip and muttered, "So fast. The tea is already cold." Then he sighed softly and said, "It's windy. Is the weather going to change?" Then he walked in slowly. He walked into his bedroom. Sitting in front of the desk, he muttered to himself, "The array is going to be activated in advance? That blood-colored luck." He sighed deeply. "Too fast." Diwu Qingru said softly. He quietly looked at the name list on the table. This was the name list of the Diwu clan. He flipped through it in his hands, and his gaze stopped at the name, Diwu Qingyan. He sighed and looked at the other names. Then he said softly, almost as if he was whispering, "If that's the case, we have to clean them up thoroughly. Otherwise, when the sky changes, it will be too late." While Chu Yang and the others were constantly moving towards the south, Diwu Qingru was also making plans on this vast continent. There were many people who were related to Chu Yang, and they were also advancing towards this place. There were many people that Chu Yang hadn't thought of. In the southeast direction, thousands of miles behind Chu Yang and the others, a handsome couple, who looked like an immortal couple, was leading a beautiful girl towards the south. Qianqian's cultivation should have been stabilized, right? Feng Yuro said with a smile. Wu Qianqian said, "Yes, I feel that there are no fluctuations now. It's just that teacher has sacrificed too much for this matter." Yu Lingxue said with a faint smile, "Our losses can be recouped with a seat. It's nothing. It's just that you're about to go out into the martial world for training. As a girl, you can't defend yourself without sufficient strength." Wu Qianqian said softly, "Yes." Feng Yuro said, "Qianqian, you're going to the medicine banquet this time. It's a good time for you to train. You have to be careful at all times. You must remember, Once you meet those playboys who are looking for trouble, don't be soft-hearted. Kill those who should be killed, don't be merciful. Once you're merciful, you'll be harming yourself. Yu Lingxue said with a faint smile. Ro, you're wrong. Our brother's methods are much cleaner than yours. Feng Yuro rolled her eyes at him and said, no matter how clean she is, it's her first time in the martial world after all. Yu Lingxue raised his hands in surrender. I'm wrong, Wu Qianqian smiled. After the first part, you can walk by yourself. Feng Yuro looked at Wu Qianqian lovingly. She took out a bracelet from her chest and put it on Wu Qianqian's wrist. She said, this is a piece of starwood. I've already refined it. I'll teach you how to use it. If you have anything in the future, just put it in here. When you need it, just take it out directly. Wu Qianqian's eyes reddened. Teacher, are you leaving? Qianqian, you still have to walk your own path. Feng Yuro said with a gentle smile. Your teacher you and I can't follow you forever. Your stormy life hasn't started yet. I'm just paving a path for you, but to really stand on top of it, you still have a long way to go. Yes, teacher. Wu Qianqian pursed her lips. The three of them walked forward for a while more before the three of them parted ways. Feng Yuro looked at Wu Qianqian's black figure drifting away, and finally not looking back. Her eyes reddened. She said, I don't know why Qianqian likes black so much. She hasn't changed. Yu Lingxue looked at Wu Qianqian's back and said with a smile, this child has a good temperament. She only turned back once. When she turned back, she was smiling. When she turned back, she cried twice. This child just doesn't want us to worry. Feng Yuro asked, are we really going to let her leave by herself? It's her first time in the martial world. We naturally have to follow her for a period of time and observe secretly. Yu Lingxue said. However, you mustn't do anything unless it's a critical moment. Once you give her a sense of dependence, her life will be over. Feng Yuro nodded. The two of them waited until Wu Qianqian was out of sight before they followed her quietly. But as they followed her slowly, the couple's eyes widened. This disciple of his was much stronger than he had expected. With Wu Qianqian's looks and figure, she was definitely one of the top 3 beauties in the entire heavenly realm. Along the way, she had attracted a lot of lascivious men. But no matter what, Miss Wu had been a minister before. She had taken over the position of the King of Hell Chu. Although she wasn't the real King of Hell, as long as she could act as the King of Hell, would there be anyone who would be merciful? They saw that Miss Wu adhering to the idea of eliminating evil. After walking for less than 300 miles, she had already slaughtered 3 slaughterhouses. Along the way, heads rolled and blood dripped. Miss Wu's expression didn't change. Like a breeze blowing through a pool of blood. Feng Yuro looked at Yu Lingxue in disbelief. Is this really our disciple? Yu Lingxue smiled bitterly. I heard that she had done the work of the King of Hell in the lower 3 heavens. Feng Yuro was surprised and didn't say anything. On the other side, from a high mountain, Bu Luqing and Mo Qingwu, who was dressed in red, were also coming down the mountain. It was Mo Qingwu's first time coming down the mountain. She was so happy that she danced. Since old man Ning isn't here, I'll bring you down the mountain to play. Bu Liuqing's words made Mo Qingwu excited for a few days. Today was finally the day to go out. Since coming to the upper 3 heavens, Mo Qingwu had grown a lot taller. The 12-year-old little girl had actually started to show her figure. The master and disciple went down the mountain and headed in the direction of the south. Bu Luqing was calculating in his heart. He didn't know if there were any medicines that Mo Qingwu needed at the medicine banquet. If there were, he would take advantage of it. If there weren't, he would take advantage of the remaining heaven-nourishing jade. Even if that old bastard Ning Tinya ran until his legs broke, he wouldn't be as good as me. In this day and age, it was a competition of IQ. But there was only one problem that gave Bu Luqing a headache. Master, do you think we'll meet Brother Chu Yang at this banquet? Mo Qingwu's face was full of anticipation. Not necessarily. This thing is mainly for pharmacists. Your brother Chu Yang is already good at practicing the sword. Can he be omnipotent? Bu Luqing said. Then can we not go to this banquet? Let's go find Brother Chu Yang. Mo Qingwu suggested excitedly. Brother Chu Yang is much better than this banquet. It's also much more interesting. Buluqing thought in his heart. Only you think that brother Chu Yang is good-looking. I don't see what's so good about him. Interesting. What's so interesting about him? Other than that sharp tongue of his, I don't see anything interesting about him either. Buluqing was depressed at the thought of this. Looking at this situation, would the little brother that he had painstakingly taught be taken advantage of by that bastard? That bastard is so much older than little Wu. He's a classic example of an old cow eating young grass. Please. Mo Qinggu started to act coquettishly. She pulled Buluqing's hand and started to shake it. Buluqing's face fell. He hurriedly changed his words. This medicine banquet is a grand event of the upper three heavens. It's so fun. Even if they're not pharmacists, they'll still go and watch the fun. Your brother Chu Yang will definitely go too. Ah, long live. Mo Qinggu was elated. She urged repeatedly, Master, let's go quickly. The faster the better. Why don't you carry me? I'm not a donkey. Buluqing was so angry that he almost scolded her. But he still said patiently, the medicine banquet will only start when the flowers bloom in spring. Let's walk slowly. If we go early, your brother Chu Yang will definitely not go. We'll also miss the scenery along the way. Mo Qinggu pouted. Okay. At this moment in the distant upper three heavens, in the secret area of the Ao clan, Gu Duxing, Xie Danqiong, Mo Tianji, Ao Xian, GMO, Luo Kadi and the rest gathered together, facing the door of the secret room. Ao Xian asked, Is everyone ready? The brothers nodded. Ao Xian's face was solemn. Everyone pay attention. Once the door opens, hurry up. He slowly took off his clothes, leaving only his underwear on. Suddenly, he raised his head and let out a long roar. This long roar reverberated and went straight into the clouds. It actually turned into a loud and clear dragon roar. Golden dragon scales suddenly appeared on Ao Xian's body. From dawn till now I haven't slept at all. I've only slept 4 times. Even I'm surprised at how useless I am. It's as if there's a mountain pressing down on my heart. The outbursts this whole month are really hard to explain. Chapter 950. Dragon scales appeared. Ao Xian's muscles bulged. Dense dragon scales appeared from his ankles, and then spread up his legs at an extremely fast speed. In a short while they had reached his chest. Author's note. Translated by Kyomura, edited by Elrianth. They continued to climb up. Neck, face, head. Slowly his whole body was shining with a golden light. On his forehead, 2 protrusions were slowly growing, like 2 dragon horns breaking out of his skin. Ao Xian held his breath and let out a long and loud roar. He exhaled and shouted continuously. At this moment he suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, Now! With a clang, Gu Duxing, who was already a 7th grade sword sovereign, drew his black dragon sword. With a flash of sword light, it reached Ao Xian's chest. At this moment, a dragon scale on Ao Xian's chest suddenly disappeared, revealing his heart. Gu Duxing did not hesitate. With a flash of sword light, it pierced into his chest. With a spin, he retracted his sword at lightning speed and retreated. Ao Xian looked up to the sky and screamed. A column of blood spurted out from his chest and fell into the mouth of the huge dragon statue in the secret ground. The next moment, this huge dragon statue, which was as tall as a dozen people, suddenly emitted a blazing red light, illuminating the entire secret ground in a red color. Soaring proudly, soaring across the sky, 10,000 years, first dragon transformation. A murmur of chanting sounded. The secret ground, which was tightly sealed, slowly separated into 2 sides. A round hole was revealed. The red light shone, but it was so deep that one could not see the bottom. Gu Duxing rushed forward and shouted, Go in! He grabbed Ao Xian's waist and rushed into the hole at lightning speed. Mo Tianji followed closely behind, and Xie Danqiong followed closely behind. GMO and Xie Danqiong entered almost at the same time. Luo Kadi was the last to enter, but at this moment, the hole had already begun to close. Second young master Luo cried out. His body had already entered, but half of his buttocks were clamped. What the fuck? Luo Kadi wanted to cry but failed to shed any tears. He fiercely tore off a piece of flesh from his buttocks, and only then was he able to free himself. He grimaced in pain, but he didn't dare to slow down at all. Second young Master Luo ran as fast as he could, with blood dripping from his buttocks. This young master is too pitiful. People describe it as a coincidence, but this young master has really squeezed my butt. Second young Master Luo wrinkled his face and was about to cry. This image, damn it. It's as if I'm running for my life even though I've contracted hemorrhoids. Today, I'm wearing white clothes to show my elegance and attract the attention of a girl. My noble and upright image is completely ruined. The mountain wall had been sealed, and the inside of the cave was filled with milky white light. He ran at full speed, and as he walked, the passage behind him was sealed. The rumbling sounds were endless, and he really didn't dare to stop at all. Especially second young Master Luo, who was at the back, felt that his buttocks would be clamped again at any time. He didn't even dare to look back along the way. He didn't know how far he had run, and the terrain began to descend, and he didn't know how deep it was. After a full hour, he reached a relatively wide area. The passage behind him was sealed, and no longer continued. Everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. From the looks of it, it should be sealed in the belly of a mountain that was sealed deep underground. Luo Kadi stopped his footsteps with a schwa sound. He breathed in cold air, and only now had the time to treat the wound on his buttocks. GMO heard the dripping sounds, and turned around to look. He couldn't help but cry out, "Damn! Miss Luo, your period came? Why didn't you prepare any protection?" In such a tense atmosphere, when GMO's words came out, everyone turned around to look, and immediately burst out laughing. Even the cold-faced Gu Duxing revealed a trace of a smile. With this guy GMO following, there was no lack of jokes at any time. Luo Kadi's face twisted, and he fiercely said, "Get lost." Since there were no women here, second young Master Luo directly took off all his clothes. It was really inconvenient for him to do it himself, so he stuck out his buttocks and said to GMO, "Come, apply medicine on my buttocks." GMO retched and covered his nose. He took out some medicine. "Don't fucking fart at this time." "I'm coming." Suddenly there was laughter. Luo Kadi's head was sweating from the pain, and he couldn't help but laugh until his whole body twitched. Marshal Inyang everyone turned to look, and saw that this cave was about 100 feet wide, and the stone walls were smooth. Perhaps even a gecko wouldn't be able to stay on top of it. In the opposite direction, there were 3 passages, and they were still dark. Everyone was stunned. How could there be 3 passages? They all looked at Aoxia Yin, and Aoxia Yin was also at a loss. He spread out his hands and shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't want to kill a sheep. At this moment, the whole earth suddenly seemed to tremble, and a buzzing sound came from below, as if there were millions of people praying in an extremely distant place. The sound got closer and closer, and gradually, it reached them like an avalanche. Tribulation completed, the sky red. The dragon soars, dominating the sky. It was still a murmuring voice, tirelessly repeating the same words over and over again. The ground trembled and slowly cracked. A dragon head statue slowly rose from the ground, its mouth wide open. Then it quieted down and stood in front of Aoxia Yin. Again, Aoxia Yin blinked. "How much blood do I have to release?" Mo Tianji said. "There's no other choice. It seems like we can only release your blood today." GMO applied medicine on Luo Kadi's buttocks as he said, "It's a pity that Miss Luo's blood can't be used, otherwise, you would have saved so much. Look at how much it's dripping along the way." Luo Kadi stuck out his buttocks, cursing continuously. Aoxia Yin said angrily, "Even if it can be used, it's still the blood of the buttocks. How can it be the same? It's too dirty." Everyone laughed, and Luo Kadi finally stood up, gritting his teeth. He said angrily, "All of you are bullying me. No one comforts me when I'm injured." GMO gave Luo Kadi's buttocks, which had just been bandaged, a slap. While Luo Kadi jumped up in pain, GMO had already said, "Actually, you should be glad that you're a man. If you were a woman and spent every day with us, you would have gotten pregnant long ago. Get lost." Everyone roared together, and Mo Tianji was no exception. Aoxia Yin laughed, and at the same time, he activated the cultivation bloodline in his body. Gu Duxing mercilessly struck again, and a blood arrow shot into the dragon's mouth again. The hole on the left lit up for a moment, and then slowly closed. leaving only the one on the right open. Is this the power of the bloodline? Emotinji pondered. A figure flashed, and Luo Kadi had already rushed to the front. With a whoosh he went in. This time, I want to be in front, second young master Luo said excitedly. Let's see who's the one who's going to get caught. Turning around, he saw the other 5 people slowly walking in with smiles on their faces. GMO said disdainfully, Idiot, this hole is not sealed. Luo Kadi was dumbfounded. He stomped his feet and thumped his chest. This time, it was relatively stable. Everyone walked in one after another. Mo Tianji said, Duxing don't support Ao Xie Yin. Let him walk in front. We'll just follow behind him. Gu Duxing agreed. Ao Xie Yin had lost too much blood and was already a little dazed. However, after drinking a few mouthfuls of water, his spirits were lifted. Xie Yin, don't cover the wound on your chest. Leave it open and let the smell of your blood spread out. Mo Tianji instructed calmly. Okay. Ao Xie Yin didn't say anything else. He walked in with his wound open. Luo Kadi, you'll still be at the back. Mo Tianji ordered again. He had never been to such a place before. But based on his intuition and the word bloodline, he thought of many things. Luo Kadi walked back in confusion and asked, Why? Xie Danqiong glared at him and said in a low voice, This place is activated by the power of the bloodline. You're injured. If you walk in front, the smell of your blood will cover the smell of Ao Xie Yin's bloodline. Stupid, you can't even think of this? Luo Kadi was shocked. Sorry, I didn't think of it. This is also my guess. It may not be accurate. Mo Tianji said. But in the future, when you encounter such complicated and strange things, you must listen to the command. Otherwise, if you take a wrong step, all of us will be finished. Mo Tianji looked at the others with some warning. The brothers nodded. He was making use of this incident to give his brothers another psychological hint to further ensure their safety. Because Mo Tianji knew that there were too many strange places and powerful enemies in the upper 3 heavens. If they didn't make thorough preparations in the upper 3 heavens, they would only be courting death if they rushed up one day. And Ao Xie Yin opening the treasure of the dragon race this time made Mo Tianji even more certain that he and his brothers would definitely be able to rush up to the upper 3 heavens. The awakening of the bloodline wasn't without reason. Since it existed, it would be of great use. Moreover, that murmur also accurately said, 10,000 years, the beginning of the transformation into a dragon. In particular, the words 10,000 years made Mo Tianji feel that there was a hint of destiny. Mo Tianji felt uncomfortable when he heard the word destiny. It was as if everything wasn't under his control. He couldn't help but think, if Chu Yang was here, what would he do? What would he think? Everyone entered in a single file. After walking for a few thousand feet, Mo Tianji finally relaxed. As he walked, he smeared a special kind of fragrance on the stone walls along the way without leaving a trace. Although he knew that this kind of awakening of the bloodline wouldn't be dangerous, Mo Tianji still instinctively started to prepare for a rainy day. The further they walked, the wider it became. The milky white fog also became thicker and thicker. Breathing in this milky white spiritual energy made one feel extremely comfortable. It was as if the cultivation in one's body was improving with every breath. There was a bend in the road ahead. A faint red light shone through. Everyone quickened their pace and walked over. The moment they turned the bend, the brothers couldn't help but be stunned. Right in front of them was a large milky white space. It was at least a few thousand feet wide. It was simply inconceivable that there was such a large space underground. In the center of this space, there was a huge golden dragon, lying there silently. A pair of eyes emitted a blood-red light as it looked at everyone. In 2 years, it's the first time I've charged up the monthly votes list. I hope everyone will support me. I hope this month can be like this, soaring proudly, soaring through the sky. But I don't need 10,000 years. This time is enough. If it's 10,000 years, I reckon I'll have reincarnated to become the master of the Calamity Sword. I woke up at 3 in the morning. I've only written 2 chapters until now. I'll change the 2nd chapter and send it out later, requesting monthly votes. Chapter 951. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The dragon was more than 10 feet long. Its body was soft and gentle, but it had a natural aura of elegance and power. Martial yin yang. When everyone saw it, they felt a wave of shock in their hearts. They did not even dare to breathe. It was a natural dragon's aura. After a moment of silence, they realized that the dragon was not moving at all. Although its eyes were shining, it was definitely not a living creature. There were a few antique shelves around it, covered in a layer of white fog. After wiping them, they realized that these shelves were made of purple crystal. On them, there were secret manuals made of beast skin, sabers, swords, fists, and legs. Basically, all the weapons one could think of were here. Then there was a single shelf. On it, there was a big book made of purple crystal and a shining pearl. In this milky white land of spiritual energy, this pearl was like a star. After 10,000 years, it still did not change its color. Divine Dragon Secret Manual. Those who do not have the dragon bloodline cannot learn it. On the purple crystal shelf, there was a line of words. On the stone wall opposite, there were a few lines of words. The Divine Dragon clan originated from the east of the firmament. It has been a long time, and no one can verify it. Today the heavens have collapsed. With the power of the dragon ancestor, this place was established. Descendants of the future, do not be idle. The original power of the firmament is here. One dragon pearl. The firmament's divine essence, countless secret manuals. If you do not succeed, do not leave this place. Descendants of the inherited bloodline need to remember that if one day you can travel the firmament, you can go to the east and fulfill the regret of the dragon clan for hundreds of thousands of years. It was a very simple and clear sentence. It was half a sentence and half a sentence. It also showed that the level of the divine dragon lord, who left these words, was only passable. Ao Xian only felt his heart wavering. He could not help but walk forward, wanting to take the divine dragon secret manual. Just as his palm touched the divine dragon secret tome, the pearl beside it suddenly shone brightly. Then, it slowly flew up and soared into the air. Then, it flew one round around Ao Xian, as if it was confirming something. Finally, it turned into a ray of light and drilled into Ao Xian's bleeding chest wound, disappearing from sight. Ao Xian only felt a sudden dizziness in his head. He was in a daze. He seemed to have understood something, and also seemed to have come into contact with something. However, everything was illusory and unfathomable. Yet after a long while, he finally regained his senses. He saw that his 5 brothers were standing in front of him, looking at him with concern. Ao Xian's heart warmed. I'm fine. This is a Dragon Ball. It has fused with my bloodline. So that's how it is. Mo Tianji smiled in relief. Xiaoyan, congratulations. Looks like you're really going to transform into a dragon. Ao Xian smiled and nodded. GMO suddenly interrupted. He worriedly said, what should we do then? I say, old Ao Xian, if you really transform into a dragon, of course your body will have to become bigger. Correspondingly, that thing will also have to become bigger. There is really no one who can stand you. In this world, where can we find a female dragon for you? Hearing this, everyone was petrified on the spot. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They really didn't understand how this guy's brain worked. Every time he looked at a problem, he could always think of this aspect that made them not know whether to laugh or cry. Ao Xian's face was distorted as he said, you don't have to worry about this. Suddenly he said angrily, GMO, you're meddling in too many things. Mo Tianji looked at GMO with disappointment and helplessness. You idiot. He only has the bloodline of the dragon race. It's not like he's directly a dragon. He's still like this normally. Why can't he do it? GMO scratched his head. He was a little embarrassed and said, I just felt a little emotional when I saw this dragon. According to this ratio, if Ao Xian really does that thing, it will have to be at least this thick. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and gestured, circling a space as thick as a person's calf. Then he shook his head and said, no, it has to be at least as thick as Luo Kudi's head. Fuck you. Luo Kudi immediately pounced on him in anger. The two of them immediately wrestled. The others looked at these two buffoons helplessly. They really didn't know what to say. When we go back, I'll tell Abua about your past affairs. Luo Kudi's face was black with anger. GMO, just you wait. Sir. You're my dear sir. GMO screamed and rushed forward to apologize. He cried miserably. Look at my thin arms and legs. That big sister can send me flying with one slap. I'm already in deep water and suffering. Don't add insult to injury. As he said this, he actually smiled wretchedly. But fortunately, I had the foresight to find the boss and get the medicine. Now I'm also very powerful, ha ha ha. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. They couldn't do anything about this buffoon. Mo Tianji had heard GMO talk about this huge dragon, so he paid attention to it. He walked over to take a look. Ao Xiaoyan also went over. Even though GMO was talking nonsense, Ao Xiaoyan still secretly glanced at the huge dragon's crotch. Then he suddenly opened his mouth wide. He lowered his head to look at his own crotch, and shook his head repeatedly. Web. The corner of Mo Tianji's mouth secretly twitched. He whispered, Are you ashamed of your inferiority? Ao Xiaoyan's face was red. He said angrily, Tianji, you're also making a fuss. I'm really. During this period of time, the brothers were together every day. They didn't have any taboos when they talked. Ao Xiaoyan smiled bitterly and changed the topic. Legend has it that there should be a hidden treasure of a calamity sword master here. Why haven't I seen it? Mo Tianji shook his head. This should be a rumor. This place existed when the world was destroyed. At that time, even the first calamity sword master hadn't appeared yet. How could there be a hidden treasure of a calamity sword master here? Ao Xiaoyan laughed. I'm a little greedy. Mo Tianji also laughed. He approached the dragon, stretched out his finger, and tapped on the dragon's body, saying, This thing doesn't look like a real dragon. But this material is really strange. It actually seems a little warm. The two circled around the dragon, and finally found words on the other side. Heavenly origin energy of heaven and earth. Consume divine essence first, then absorb origin energy. If you can't absorb it, don't leave this place. The two of them sucked in a breath of cold air. This enormous dragon was actually an entire piece of heavenly source energy. And from the meaning of these words, they couldn't leave until they finished absorbing it. How long would it take to absorb it? Even if they worked together, they probably wouldn't be able to absorb it in a short period of time. At the very least, it might take a year. If they were slow, it would take him 8 to 10 years. Below this line of words, there were neatly arranged pieces of shiny things that looked like stars. Mo Tianji reached out and picked one up. It felt warm and soft to the touch. At the same time, he felt a strong desire in his stomach. It was as if he desperately wanted to eat this thing. Before he could resist, this thing had already flown into Mo Tianji's mouth. It melted in his mouth and turned into a warm current, entering his meridians. At the same time, 5 of the other 8 pieces of heavenly origin energy flew up from the dragon's body and entered the mouths of Ao Xiaoyan, Gu Duxing, Xie Danqiong, GMO, and Luo Kudi respectively. Then, the milky white fog in the entire space suddenly thickened. Milky white spiritual energy slowly spewed out from the dragon's mouth, filling the entire space. So this pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth is produced by this dragon. No, this piece of heavenly origin energy. As long as these heavenly origin energy are taken out from here, the heavenly origin energy will evaporate faster. What an exquisite design! Mo Tianji exclaimed. Gu Duxing stepped forward and said in a deep voice, This is a rare treasure. It's also a rare blessing. It's a pity that Big Brother, Wuxiang, and Butong aren't here. Otherwise, it would be great if we could absorb it and cultivate together. At the mention of Chu Yang, everyone fell silent. Their moods instantly became very heavy. Until now, there had been no news of Chu Yang. After a long time, Mo Tianji took a deep breath and said, Don't worry, everyone. It's useless to think about anything now. We can only do our own things now. If Chu Yang isn't dead, he will definitely meet up with us. GMO, who had been laughing all this time, was silent at this moment. Suddenly he asked, But at that time, will the Heavenly Armament Pavilion still be the Heavenly Armament Pavilion? When this sentence came out, the atmosphere immediately became heavy. Motianji took a deep breath and solemnly raised his hand. I swear that the Heavenly Armament Pavilion will still be the Heavenly Armament Pavilion at that time. He put down his hand with a bitter smile and said lightly, I know that you've always been worried about this, but I promised Chu Yang that I would accompany him to dance with the wind and clouds in the sky, to be free and unrestrained in the world together, to be proud and wild together. He said heavily, Chu Yang isn't here now, but we are. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion is still here. So I'll do my part for him. If Chu Yang is still alive, there will be a day when we stand side by side in the heavens. If Chu Yang is dead, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion will immediately disband. Don't think that I've been controlling you all this time. In fact, I can't do anything. In this world besides Chu Yang, there is no one else who can control you. Jimo's expression softened. He rubbed his nose and said embarrassedly, I'm sorry. Motianji patted his shoulder and smiled understandingly. I can understand you. It's a good thing that you value your brothers. Why would I blame you? He said lightly. In the past, I only wanted to be free and unrestrained. I wanted to control the world in the palm of my hand. I wanted to move the wind and clouds with the wave of my hand. That was my life's ambition. But now that I think about it, although that was glorious, it was also lonely. I only understood it when I met you all. Motianji smiled warmly. His eyes shone with sincerity. He said slowly, only with brothers can one be happy. Only with brothers can one be happy. The other 5 people silently repeated this sentence. Their eyes shone. If you don't experience things together, if you don't go through life and death together, if you don't go through hardships together, you will never understand what kind of feelings are contained in this word. An understanding. Because you have brothers, your heart will no longer be lonely and wandering. You won't always look at people with distrust. You won't feel lonely, and your heart will be at peace. Because I know that even if the whole world is against me, I won't be lonely. Motianji was silent for a long time. Then he said, after we absorb all of this, there won't be many people in this world who can do anything to us. There's one thing I can tell you. Gu Duxing frowned and asked, what is it? Motianji said solemnly, everyone here is my brother. Don't let anyone else know about this. The 5 of them looked at each other. They didn't know what he was going to say. Motianji's eyes shone brightly. He said word by word. The reason why I firmly believe that Chu Yang is not dead is because Chu Yang is very likely to be the Tribulation Sword Master who came out to face this tribulation. Add 400 more words to this chapter. Many people don't like me describing my brothers, so I can only add more words to the extra words. And Motianji's understanding this time is also what I have been understanding these few days. I am not lonely because I have all of you. I am not fighting alone because I have all of you with me. These few days, all of you have given me too much warmth and touched me. Just as Motianji said, only with brothers can one be happy. That's why I wrote some of my own things at the end of the chapter, including ugly things and happy things. Because I want to share all of my emotions with all of you. I want all of you to smile because of me, even if it's my embarrassing things. I'm very happy to be able to exchange for your smiles. Because I've finally brought you some joy. Many people don't like what I wrote, but I can't help it. Haha. I once said that if you read one of my books, including the nonsense at the end of my chapters, I'll make you feel that I'm real in front of you. I care about all of you. Thank you. These few days I'm very touched and satisfied. Chapter 952. Motianji's eyes shone brightly. He said word by word. The reason why I firmly believe that Chu Yang is not dead is because Chu Yang is very likely to be the Tribulation Sword Master who came out of this tribulation. The moment this sentence came out, it was simply earth-shattering. It was as if a bolt from the blue had suddenly struck the hearts of the brothers. In an instant, the brothers fell silent. Jimo's body trembled. Luo Kudi's body swayed. Ao Xia Yin suddenly turned to look at Motianji. Xia Danxiong clutched his heart. A deathly silence. Master of Calamity Sword? Luo Kudi's lips trembled. The dragon-like Master of Calamity Sword? Is our boss? Motianji said slowly. I'm not sure. However, based on all the signs, The possibility of Chu Yang being the master of calamity sword is close to 70%. Aoxia Yin. And the rest also swayed. Mo Tianji's temper was never one to be full of promises. Normally, even if he was 100% sure of something, he would only say 80%. 80% was Mo Tianji's limit. Anything he did, he would always leave an unknown variable. Therefore, Mo Tianji always had a backup plan. Now, Mo Tianji said that the possibility of Chu Yang being the master of calamity sword was close to 70%. Then, based on everyone's understanding of him, the possibility of Mo Tianji being the master of calamity sword was close to 50%. Thinking of this, everyone felt dizzy. The master of calamity sword was an eternal legend in the heavenly layer continent for 100,000 years. Every 10,000 years, there would be a master of calamity sword who would come out to cleanse the heavenly layer continent. Every 10,000 years, there would be a master of calamity sword who would come out to cleanse the heavenly layer continent. The ruling clan of the upper three heavens was the clan that followed this brother of the master of calamity sword. As long as they could follow the master of calamity sword, they would bring 10,000 years of glory to their clan. Calamity, sword, master. The heavenly layer continent was the true ruler. Aoxia Yin rubbed his forehead and said with a groan, "This is really unexpected. It feels as unreal as a dream." The brothers who usually drink, chat, fight, and joke with each other are the tribulation sword masters who are high above the masses like gods. Xie Danxiong forced a smile. His handsome face was flushed with excitement. He wanted to control his emotions by force, but he couldn't. His whole body trembled as he said, "I cough, 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 cough." Qianghua, who had always been graceful and calm, was unable to say a word at this moment. She felt her throat was blocked by saliva. She kept coughing and clearing her throat, but she felt more and more phlegm in her throat. GMO trembled, and then trembled again. Finally he moaned, "My pores are all open because of your words. They are shaking. Boss is the master of calamity sword. I am going to defecate." Luo Kadi's legs went soft, and he almost fell on his butt. He suddenly burst into tears of joy. "I'm not dreaming, am I?" Mo Tianji's throat was also swallowing something. He had vaguely guessed it in his heart, but when he said it out loud, he still felt that indescribable excitement and speechless shock. He felt as if electricity was running through his body. It was really as GMO said. The pores all over his body were opened. He looked sideways and saw Gu Duxing holding the black dragon sword and standing at the side. He was actually expressionless. Mo Tianji was surprised. "Duxing, aren't you surprised at all?" A smile appeared on Gu Duxing's statue-like face like a spring breeze. His smile slowly widened. He let out a long breath and murmured, "So he is really not dead." Suddenly, he laughed and said happily, "So he is really not dead." Without any warning, he punched Mo Tianji in the stomach and laughed. "So he is really not dead." Mo Tianji was caught off guard. This punch almost made his internal organs churn. He held his stomach and bent down. He shouted angrily, "Bastard! What are you doing?" Then, he saw Gu Duxing rushing over and hugging him. He laughed and jumped as he shouted, "Big brother is not dead. Boss is not dead. Ha ha ha." Mo Tianji's stomach was in pain from his punch, but he was still affected by his sincere feelings. He smiled and said, "Yes, he is not dead. He is not dead. Ha ha ha." Gu Duxing laughed. Net after he had vented his emotions a little, Mo Tianji groaned and asked, "Duxing, did you already know that Big Brother is the master of calamity sword?" Gu Duxing smiled. He leaned on his sword and said, "I have been with Boss for the longest time. I always felt that he was not ordinary, but I never thought of digging up his secrets. I had a feeling that he was the master of the calamity sword, but I was not sure." He smiled. "It doesn't matter. Whether he is the master of the calamity sword or an ordinary person, he is still Chu Yang. He is our brother. Since that is the case, what does it matter if he is the master of the calamity sword?" Gu Duxing smiled and said, "I never doubt my brother, and I don't want to dig up his secrets. On this point, Dong Wushang should have the same temperament as me." Mo Tianji pondered. After a long time he said, Yes, you are more honest than me. Gu Duxing smiled and shook his head. He said, everyone has their own feelings and missions. Your specialty is scheming, and resourcefulness. If you're as real as I am, then the future of US brothers may not be as good. Mo Tianji laughed out loud. He laughed until tears came out of his eyes. Du Xing, this sentence of yours is the most interesting sentence I have ever heard. Gu Duxing chuckled. On the side, GMO grabbed Luo Kadi. Second young master Luo, did you hear that? If boss is the master of the Calamity Sword, won't our clan be able to survive for 10,000 years? Luo Kadi was also excited. Yes, but then their faces fell. Luo Kadi said with a sad face. Now in the three heavens, my brother already sees me as a thorn in his side. If that is the case, doesn't it mean that I will have to endure for 10,000 years? What big clan? Gu Duxing got angrier and angrier. Big clan? Just the two of you, good for nothings? Now you are already planning that kind of thing? If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will break your legs one by one. Now that boss is not here, who dares to mention big clan to me? Gu Duxing said angrily. You are rebelling. Luo Kadi and GMO kept quiet out of fear. GMO said, I was just kidding. You can't even joke. Gu Duxing said angrily. Are you following boss because you want to become a big clan? He felt the same way as he did back then. True brothers with affection. Even if you die, you have no regrets. If you don't have affection, even if you become a big clan, you will only be despised. After saying that, Gu Duxing glared at the two of them. I know you are joking, but once this kind of thing is rooted in your heart, you will slowly fall from this team. Now you two go and practice. While you are practicing in this space, I will keep an eye on you. If your progress is slow, it means your heart is in a mess. If your heart is in a mess, it means you want to become a big clan again. Yes, I will find you at any time to have a good talk and learn from each other. GMO and Luo Kadi cried out at the same time. You are really kidding. But Gu Duxing had already turned around. He ignored them. GMO sighed. What should we do? It is all your fault. Luo Kadi covered his butt and sighed. Second brother Gu is like this. Let's practice well. After a few days, we will join hands to beat him up ruthlessly and turn him into a soft second brother. That will be all. GMO laughed out loud. Then he suddenly remembered something. He fiercely slapped Luo Kadi's buttocks and said as if he had suddenly realized something. I understand now. Luo Kadi was slapped on his wound. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He frowned. Fuck. What are you doing? GMO said gloomily. I just remembered that boss doesn't take oaths seriously. Once something happens he will say, I swear in the name of Calamity Sword. ****. Now I understand that boss was just playing with his mouth. We all know that swearing in the name of Calamity Sword is the most important oath in the heavenly layer. Who would have thought that that guy is the master of Calamity Sword? GMO didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The master of Calamity Sword controls the Calamity Sword. And the master of Calamity Sword swears in the name of Calamity Sword. Isn't that just bullshit? No wonder boss is so relaxed. He just opened his mouth and said it. Before, I was worried that boss would just say one sentence whenever he opened his mouth. This is too casual. Now I know that everything boss said was bullshit. Luo Kadi covered his butt and laughed. Boss is really interesting. Gu Duxing frowned. Why haven't I heard boss mention this before? GMO said angrily. You're just a taciturn person. Does boss need to swear in front of you? Damn it. Last time in the far north wastelands, boss and I were arguing about the gender of a snow wolf. Boss said, I swear in the name of Calamity Sword that this snow wolf is female. Then I spent a lot of effort to catch it. But it was male. Boss said that it wasn't the one he was talking about. The one he was talking about was obviously female. Fuck, catching a snow wolf in the far north wastelands. Look at how fast the snow wolf runs. Everyone was laughing so hard that they fell over. Catching a snow wolf in the far north wastelands. This guy really made them speechless. Luo Kadi said, twitching all over. Boss is asking you to practice your lightness techniques. Mo Tianji cleared his throat and said, everyone, stop fooling around. Chu Yang is right not to tell us. After all, we're not strong enough. Once our identities are revealed, we'll be doomed eternally. The reason why I'm telling you now is because we can't get out of here. I'm just giving you guys something to think about. Secondly, it's also because of this heavenly origin energy. Such a huge piece of it, at least tens of thousands of pounds. If it all turns into spiritual energy and turns into cultivation, even if we split it evenly, everyone can at least reach the high level of martial saint. This is the lowest estimate. In this way, even in the upper three heavens, we'll have the power to protect ourselves. So the main task now is to practice martial arts. Mo Tianji said seriously. Don't stop practicing martial arts. Start immediately. When we come out of seclusion, it'll be time for us to kill our way up to the upper three heavens. In the afternoon, the deputy moderator gave me a link. I clicked on it and saw that it was Long Meng's comments on other books. Suddenly my heart felt warm. I was silent for a long time and couldn't say a word. Long Meng has done his best. He's done everything he can. I, Feng Ling, am eternally grateful for this kindness. Although we've never met, never talked, and never had any contact, at this moment, I really want to have a drink with you. I didn't specifically thank you for your tips, but these few posts made my heart burn. Thank you, my brother. In these 2 days, many of my brothers have deeply moved me. Many of them have specially come from pirated books to support me. Some of them have even tipped me before I reached V. Just for the monthly votes of the Proud World. I'm touched. The Proud World has never been as popular as it was these few days. But these few days, it's completely boiling. I want to say, with brothers like you, I, Feng Ling, am worth it. The world of pride belongs to everyone. Just like what a friend said, the proud world has come to this day, and you're just an author. The fate of the proud world is no longer decided by you. Wind dominates the world. The fate of Chu Yang is no longer decided by you. Wind dominates the world. And we have the final say. Yes, I admit that you have the final say. Everyone has the final say. Because this is our shared proud world. Everyone's proud world. Everyone, let's support it together. Right, leave it to me. Proud world, leave it to you. I'll go write the 4th chapter. I'm touched and unknowingly said so much. Please understand. Chapter 953. The day I come out of seclusion is the day I kill my way up to the heavens. Gu Duxing repeated slowly, his aura rising. Martial Yin Yang. But now that the heavens are completely sealed, how are we going to kill our way up? GMO said in distress. As long as Chu Yang is the master of the Calamity Sword, then Chu Yang will definitely open the seal. Mo Tianji's eyes were bright as he said, this is the mission of the master of the Calamity Sword. It is also inevitable after 10,000 years of reincarnation. All the brothers became silent. Although no one said anything, a faint fighting spirit surged out from them. Practice. Practice. Then, each of the brothers found a place and sat down beside the dragon. All of them breathed slowly and quietly. Before long, they had already entered a state where they forgot about everything around them. In the upper three heavens, preparations for the medicine banquet were underway. All the pharmacists and experts were gathering towards the south. Some had just set off, some were preparing, and some were already on their way. The upper three heavens had already started to slowly boil. The south was still covered in greenery, but in a wasteland extremely far away in the northwest, it was already cold and snowy. In the vast snow, there was someone crying in grief at this moment. It was Dong Wuxiang. Broken limbs and body parts filled the surroundings. The smell of blood rose to the sky. Dong Wuxiang knelt weakly on the snowy ground. Beside him, Mo lay or stood shakily. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with tears. In front of her was Rui Budong's body, lying quietly. There was no sound. Dong Wuxiang leaned on his long saber, tears falling like rain. He was so choked that he couldn't speak at all. Since the establishment of the 4 three-persons hall, the 3 of them had been constantly taking on missions and fighting. Their battle records and cultivation were also constantly rising. The density of spiritual energy in the upper 3 heavens was completely different from that in the upper 3 heavens. Therefore, the cultivation of the 3 of them improved faster. Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong's talents were quickly stimulated under such dense spiritual energy. 3 days ago, Dong Wuxiang had already rapidly rushed to 8th grade Saber Emperor. Because Rui Butong was an ordinary martial emperor, he was even faster than Dong Wuxiang, and was already a 2nd grade martial emperor. Net 7 by 24 hours uninterrupted update of pure TXT handwritten novel. When Mo was in the upper 3 heavens, her starting point was slightly lower than Dong Wuxiang's. However, she was now a middle-grade martial emperor. Just the day before yesterday, Dong Wuxiang had accepted a mission to escort a stalk of spirit herb. The reward was 1,000 purple crystals. Dong Wuxiang and the other two discussed for a while before they set off excitedly. Little did they know that this stock of medicine was used for the medicine banquet, and was extremely rare. Along the way, they had actually encountered wave after wave of interceptions. In the short span of 2 days, the 3 of them had already gone through 7 or 8 assassinations. Every time, it was filled with danger. For the last time, Dong Wuxiang fought madly, but he couldn't withstand the attacks of several monarch-level experts. He retreated in defeat, and was in imminent danger. Mo was also at a disadvantage, and she was trying her best to hold on. Rui Butong was even more clumsy, surrounded by dangers. However, at the most crucial moment, Rui Butong suddenly leaped up. While the 3 martial monarchs struck him with their palms at the same time, he desperately twisted the neck of that martial monarch expert. Then, he leaped up and faced the fatal longsword as he desperately hugged the strongest martial monarch expert opposite Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang stood there in a daze. His mind was still reverberating with Rui Butong's dying roar. "We can't all die. You and sister-in-law wait for boss to come up. Don't let them feel lonely and helpless when they come up. Strike. Even cut me into pieces. Kill. Dong Wuxiang fell to his knees with a thud, his tears gushing out like a fountain. "Elder. Butong." Dong Wuxiang roared at the sky. His voice was hoarse, and blood kept coming out of his throat. He seemed to see Rui Butong roaring at him again, bathed in blood. At the moment when he struck with grief and indignation, a hint of a smile flashed across Rui Butong's eyes, and a few muffled words in his throat. "Wait for him. You wait. I'm happy. I know. You want me to wait for them. Wait for them to come up and let me fight with them." Dong Wuxiang roared at the sky. But Boss and Duxing came up. "What should I say? What should I say? They asked me where is Elder? What about Butong? What should I say? You just fucking lay here quietly. It's fine. But what should I do with the rotten stall?" Dong Wuxiang roared with grief and indignation. Bastard. Bastard." As he scolded, hot tears rolled down his cheeks. Such a mighty and heroic man was sobbing uncontrollably at this moment. At the side, Mo was crying silently. Web at the moment when Rui Butong flew out with blood all over his body, Mo was really shocked. This Rui Butong, who was usually glib-tongued, and even looked a little wretched, showed such heroism and determination at that moment. It was so shocking, so full of spirit. Men had their own hot blood. Usually, they wouldn't show it. But when the world was turbulent and a man's hot blood gushed out, it was enough to move anyone. At a critical moment, when a man gave his all, it was enough to make everyone's heart surge. She clearly remembered that in the battle just now, Rui Butong had been paying attention to Dong Wuxiang's battle, and her side from the corner of his eyes. And Dong Wuxiang's heavy gaze had also been paying attention to Rui Butong and her. These 2 men, at this moment, didn't say anything, but with their most sincere attitudes and actions, they told her what men were. So this was how a man's friendship was. Rui Butong was ready to sacrifice himself for his brother at any time. And Dong Wuxiang's gaze was the same. Both of them were ready to do that at any time. But just before Dong Wuxiang made his move, Rui Butong made his move in advance. When he made his move, the situation was just a hair's breadth away, not a moment of life and death. But Rui Butong couldn't wait any longer. He knew that when that moment came, he definitely wouldn't be as fast as Dong Wuxiang. This battle was very intense, but also very short. The lineup of the 3 sides was very balanced. The opponents were individually in a kind of joint attack formation. The 3 battlefields intersected and cooperated with each other. Only the 3 monarch-level experts were the strongest and could support each other at any time. As long as he could catch one of them off guard, then Dong Wuxiang would be able to break out of the encirclement immediately and kill the rest with ease. But if Dong Wuxiang sacrificed himself, he wouldn't be able to kill all of them at the same time. So if anyone were to die, it would be him. So Rui Butong made his move in advance. He couldn't let Dong Wuxiang make his move first. Sure enough, Rui Budong's sacrifice was to risk his own life to kill one of them and break the formation. Then, he used his own life to hold on to another one. And to reduce most of the obstacles for Dong Wuxiang, Dong Wuxiang instantly broke free like a flood dragon. Carrying intense grief and indignation, his dark saber instantly transformed into a wild dragon that could overturn rivers and seas. He didn't hesitate to self-destruct and used the fastest speed to kill everyone. Then he immediately arrived beside Rui Butong. But at that time, Rui Butong was already unable to speak. He was only panting weakly. With a clear smile in his eyes, with peace and ease, he looked deeply at Dong Wuxiang, as if he wanted to engrave his brother in his mind forever. Then he smiled and his lips moved. Dong Wuxiang thought he was going to speak and moved closer to listen. But he was no longer breathing. He was so calm that it was as if he had fallen asleep. Wuxiang, don't be sad. If Butong knew in the underworld, he wouldn't want. Emole's tears fell like rain as she tried to persuade Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang shuddered and suddenly burst into tears. My brother doesn't want me to be sad. But this is my brother. But this is my brother. But this is my brother. He even smiled at me just now. He even smiled just now. How can he die? Dong Wuxiang pushed Emole to one side in a rage. He lost his mind and yelled, how can my brother die? I still want to be with him and wait for my brothers to come up. Together, we can laugh proudly in the martial world. Together we can dance in the clouds and look down on the world. Carve our names in the heavenly imperial court. Rui Butong, you promised. You promised us. You can't go back on your words. You can't go back on your words. Dong Wuxiang shook Rui Budong's body madly and yelled crazily. There was still a calm smile on Rui Budong's face. He swayed weakly as Dong Wuxiang shook him. Snowflakes landed on his face and actually stuck to it silently, no longer melting. Ah! Dong Wuxiang yelled at the sky. He spat out a mouthful of blood and let go of his hands weakly. Rui Budong's body fell weakly onto the snowy ground. And Dong Wuxiang's tall and sturdy body also fell stiffly to the ground like a golden mountain toppling over a jade pillar. Emole burst into tears. She first supported Rui Budong's body, and then went to help Dong Wuxiang. But it was already too late. With a loud crash, Dong Wuxiang fell solidly onto the snowy ground. The vast snowy plains seemed to shake violently because of his burly body falling onto the ground. Emole's tears fell like rain. She couldn't help Dong Wuxiang first. She knew that if she didn't care about Rui Budong's body and helped Dong Wuxiang, the first thing Dong Wuxiang would do when he woke up would be to be separated from her forever. No one knew better than her how much this man valued his brothers. A day passed. Ever since Dong Wuxiang woke up, he sat motionlessly in front of Rui Budong's body and muttered something. He still couldn't accept that his brother was already dead. He forced all the medicine into Rui Budong's body, including the few incomplete heavy pills that Chu Yang gave him. There were still 3 left. They were all stuffed into Rui Budong's mouth. This is boss's miracle medicine. It can cure all injuries. Dong Wuxiang said hopefully. Wake up quickly. Wake up quickly. Emole shed tears secretly. She was about to persuade him when she suddenly heard Dong Wuxiang's exclamation of joy. She hurriedly turned around in shock and saw that the ice and snow where Rui Butong was lying was actually starting to melt and turn into water. Moreover, waves of heat were rising. Dong Wuxiang jumped out and pointed from afar. He laughed loudly and shouted, "Look, he's not dead. I'm not beside him. His body is heating up." Then he jumped back and said with a trembling voice, my brother is alive." Emole's eyes widened. This matter was too strange. He had already been dead for a day and a night, and his body was already stiff. Being able to come back from the dead was really unheard of. Under the gaze of the two of them, Rui Budong's body temperature on the ground became higher and higher. Slowly, it actually started to turn red. Finally, with a whoosh, A ball of fire suddenly appeared on his body. The fire kept coming out, and in an instant, it was already a huge fire that soared into the sky. Phoenix Nirvana? Imoleer's mind flashed and she suddenly blurted out. Then, she was so shocked by her own words that she covered her mouth. Tomorrow is the last day of this month. The last day of this month. The single chapter will be published later. G. Chapter 954. Rue Budong's body, which was lying flat, suddenly burst into flames. At first, one could still see the outline of his body in the flames. But after an instant, the flames suddenly rose and became white, completely enveloping Rue Budong's body. Dong Wuxiang was too close. With a whoosh, a piece of hair on his forehead was burned off. He hurriedly retreated to avoid it. Net 7 by 24 hours nonstop update pure TXT handwritten novel. The next moment, Imoleer exclaimed, "Be careful!" She flew over and dragged Dong Wuxiang down to the ground. She slid out on the snowy ground for 100 feet. Then, she got up and pulled Dong Wuxiang to run. After running for 300 feet, when she turned back, she saw that the place where Rue Budong was at was already covered in flames. A red light shot up into the sky. The flames had already turned red. Completely red. The burning heaven and earth were covered in blood red. At this moment, all the clouds in the sky were dyed with a layer of dazzling light. Such a fire, not to mention burning a person's body. Even if the whole world was burned together, it definitely wouldn't have such power. Dong Wuxiang stared blankly. What's going on? Imoleer stared at the red light without blinking and said, "Nirvana flame." Dong Wuxiang immediately understood. Suddenly his eyes widened. "You mean, Budong, he's actually a phoenix?" Imoleer frowned. "How can you say that? It might be true that he has the awakened phoenix bloodline in his body. As for him being a phoenix, is there such a wretched phoenix in this world? But no matter what, he won't die. You can rest assured." Dong Wuxiang rubbed his hands and said excitedly, "That's great. Whether he's a phoenix or a pig, he won't die at last. When he wakes up, I'll beat this bastard to death. Fuck. I was scared to death." The flames burned fiercely and shot up into the sky. This fire burned for 3 days straight. However, except for the ice and snow on the ground, that melted a little when it started to heat up. After 3 days of burning, the rest of the ice and snow actually didn't melt at all. A wave of rugged divine power surged out. Martial Yin Yang. This fire had alarmed too many people. Countless experts saw the anomaly and wanted to come over to take a look. However, he discovered that he couldn't enter at all. As long as he was within a radius of 100 miles, he would not be able to take another step forward. No matter what your cultivation is, you can't even take a step closer. Only Dong Wuxiang and Imoleer, who were only 300 feet away, only felt warm and comfortable. Within a radius of 100 li, there were already quite a number of people gathering. Slowly more and more people gathered. There was definitely a great change in the world. If it wasn't the Tribulation Swordmaster, then it was definitely a treasure that had been unearthed. This was the common understanding of everyone. Everyone was waiting for this terrifying pressure to pass. Then they would all rush forward. As the host, the Li clan had gathered even more people. Everyone was nervous. This time, would it be an opportunity? Then in the next moment, everyone stared at the sky in shock. The clouds in the sky moved, surging like a tsunami. Then, the place where the red light was suddenly turned into a huge whirlpool, stirring slowly in the center of the entire sky. As he stirred, all of the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the surroundings began to gather at a faster and faster speed. Suddenly, with a shio sound, all of the spiritual chi within a radius of 1,000 miles disappeared without a trace. At this moment, even those people at the periphery suddenly felt suffocated. In the next moment, the wind rose and the clouds surged in the horizon. Countless amounts of pure spiritual energy crazily rushed over with a speed as fast as lightning. The spiritual energy instantly filled up the empty space in the sky. Then it was absorbed again in an instant. Once again it rushed over from all directions. Rushed over. Rushed over. The red light became brighter and brighter, stronger and stronger. The whole sky formed a whole patch of burning clouds. At the moment when the spiritual energy suddenly surged over, a red light shot out from Rui Budong's body, enveloping Dong Wuxiang and Imole as well. Then, the two of them simultaneously felt that all the pores on their bodies suddenly opened at the same time. Countless spiritual energy rushed into their bodies from every pore. At the same time, there was a numb and itchy feeling in their dantian, as if the sea of energy in their dantian was gradually expanding under a mysterious force. The meridians in their bodies were also expanding rapidly. Gradually, the inner energy in their bodies surged wildly. The two of them were shocked. They hurriedly sat down cross-legged and meditated. They only felt that their cultivation was increasing rapidly. On the 5th day, martial yin yang, a clear phoenix cry suddenly resounded through the sky. With a boom, the spiritual energy exploded and rushed up. The fiery red spiritual energy let out another clear phoenix cry in midair. A huge phoenix suddenly took shape in the sky. The fiery red wings seemed to be slowly spreading out, but they had not spread out yet. A red light suddenly exploded in the endless sky, turning into countless small red dots, scattering in the air in all directions of the continent. The spiritual energy in the world seemed to have gone crazy, rushing towards this newly formed phoenix. It seemed to be using a huge amount of spiritual energy to grow the phoenix's wings. "It's a phoenix!" A supreme martial artist leading the Li clan shouted in shock. Quickly report to the elder master." In the northeast direction, a person with a sun mark on his forehead was standing with his hands behind his back, looking at the northwest sky. Suddenly he frowned and shouted, "The phoenix has been born!" Beside him, many people exclaimed, "What?" This person frowned and muttered, "The phoenix has been born, but why hasn't the golden dragon appeared yet?" Beside him, countless people were looking up at the red in the sky. Their gazes were complicated, and there was actually an indescribable feeling of trembling. Everyone was trembling slightly as they watched and waited. The dragon soars into the sky. The phoenix spreads its wings. The Saint King is born, and the world cries. That person stared at the red in the sky and suddenly said in a low voice, "King, where are you now?" At the same time, all the birds in the world suddenly went crazy. Countless birds soared into the sky and circled around without hesitation. Then, they flapped their wings and rushed toward the northwest direction. Often when a bird flew out, it would be alone. But after flying out for a few li, it would have turned into a huge group of colorful birds. Slowly, they would form a majestic army. Using all of their strength, they would increase their speed and head northwest at the fastest speed possible. Flying rapidly, among these pairs of birds, there were even quite a few that were natural enemies. But now, they all flew together harmoniously and lined up neatly, from big to small, from weak to strong. They didn't even look at each other, not to mention killing each other. The phoenix's wings finally opened slowly and moved slowly. Suddenly, a scorching whirlwind blew between heaven and earth. The spiritual energy was rapid and dense. The glaciers within a radius of 100 miles started to melt. Only the one in the middle didn't melt. The glaciers in the periphery were still melting. The people in the periphery retreated step by step. In the end, they started to run. However, the speed of the glaciers melting became faster and faster. When they finally stopped, there was already a vast ocean in front of them. Countless birds nearby had already started to fly over and dance in the sky above the ocean. Each of them displayed their most beautiful dance moves, as if celebrating. The entire heavenly layer shook. At this moment suddenly, a loud and clear dragon's roar resounded through heaven and earth. In the sky, there was a loud boom of thunder. The entire earth was trembling rapidly. Countless people and animals were stunned by this thunderous roar. In the distant sky, a golden light seemed to rise from the ground and rushed into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the sky was golden. The image of a huge golden dragon floated in the air. Suddenly, it raised its head and let out a loud and clear dragon's roar. Then, it suddenly disappeared. In the northeast direction, in a distant place, everyone knelt down at the same time, their eyes brimming with tears. The dragon soars into the sky. The phoenix spreads its wings. When the Holy King appears, heaven and earth cry. Too many people murmured together, "King, Finally today the dragon and the phoenix appear together. King, where are you? 3 days in the glaciers of the extreme south. Tan Tan, who was cultivating, suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. The sky was golden and fiery red. Tan Tan's eyes lit up, and he murmured, "Has it started?" Then, a dense black aura suddenly emerged from his body. In an instant, his entire body was shrouded in black gas. In the far north wastelands, in the secret land of the elves, Dukyu extended his body and rushed out of the cave at the fastest speed. In a flash, he was already standing on the highest peak, looking up. His expression was excited, and his body was trembling a little. "It has finally started." Dukyu chuckled and took out an exquisite green box from his chest. He opened it carefully and looked inside. Inside, there was something that looked like a seed covered in a green halo. Dukyu pinched it with 2 fingers and looked at it with a complicated expression. He let out a long sigh and slowly put the seed into his mouth. Then he disappeared in a flash. In all directions of the continent, all the experts were looking at the northwest at this moment. They were looking at the sky. Even those who had been in seclusion for thousands of years came out one after another. They stood at the highest point of the place and looked at the sky. At the top of the law enforcement city's clock tower, a man in white stood in the wind and looked at the sky in the distance silently. Over there, the red light was dazzling. "The phoenix has come out," the man in white murmured. At this moment, his eyes were as sharp as a knife. In a moment, a golden color appeared in the clouds. "The dragon clan has come out." The man in white's face became serious. After a while, a green light rushed into the sky and stood together with the red and yellow lights. It seemed that a hodgepodge had suddenly appeared in the sky. "The elf clan." The man in white sighed and murmured, "Are all the clans going to be revived?" Immediately after, a dense black light suddenly appeared in the sky with the attitude of a ruler descending upon the world. It appeared in the middle of the green, red, and yellow lights. It swayed and churned, majestic and mighty. The white-robed man's face, which had been calm all this time, suddenly revealed an intense shock. In fact, there was even a faint sense of fear. Today's first update. I forgot that today is the Lantern Festival. Dad called me. So I hurried home and kowtowed in front of the ancestral tablets. Then I came back without stopping. I will continue to write the second update. There are less than 7 hours left. The bayonet has already seen red. After working hard for a month, it will be fixed. We are still lagging behind. I am still fighting. I will never give up. Chapter 955. This is demonic aura. It's holy aura again. The man in white narrowed his eyes and frowned. Which clan is this? Which clan? Could it be? Could it be? Deep worry appeared on the man in white's face. Heaven and earth cry. Heaven and earth cry. Is there really going to be chaos in the world? A clear sound rang out like the music of heavenly beings. That huge phoenix's wings were finally fully spread out. In an instant, green light intertwined and rose tens of thousands of feet. Golden light flashed across thousands of miles. Only a cloud of black aura remained unmoving. Too many birds from all directions also flew into the sky above the ocean. They danced on this ocean that had never appeared in the northwest region. At the moment when the phoenix spread its wings, it also stopped in the sky. The phoenix spread its wings and rushed up with a resounding phoenix cry. It pierced through the clouds. At the moment when the phoenix soared into the sky, all the birds fell silent. They quietly and respectfully prostrated and lowered their proud heads. He wanted to show his incomparable respect to his king. The phoenix soared into the sky and turned into a colorful cloud in the sky. Then, the colorful cloud dissipated and turned into a rosy glow. Finally, it disappeared. The golden dragon let out a long cry and also disappeared without a trace in an instant. The green light flickered for a moment before disappearing. Only that thick black aura was still surging in the sky. Then, the black aura suddenly surged and slowly turned into a blurry human figure. His face couldn't be seen clearly. He just stood in the void, with the sky above his head and the mountains below his feet. This figure slowly turned around and faced the northeast. He seemed to be looking, as if he was deep in thought. As if he was then, this black aura slowly dissipated and turned into a sky full of dark clouds. Dark clouds covered the sky. A shocking thunderbolt sounded, and a shining silver snake came from the sky to the ground. The torrential rain covered the entire heavenly layer as it poured down. In the northeast, when the figure turned around, everyone knelt down neatly on the ground, trembling and crying tears of joy. Millions of people shouted at the same time, "King! King! King! My king is back!" Their voices shook the world. Heavy rain poured down. The place where Dong Wuxiang, Emole and Rue Butong, where it was already an isolated island. In fact, they were floating on the surface of the water. Countless icebergs were drifting back and forth, making the small island they were on look like a grain of sand in the middle of the ocean. It was so inconspicuous. The experts in the periphery had already begun to cut wood and build boats. Who knew that there would be a day where they would need to use boats in the northwest? Other than icebergs, there was a snowfield. Tall mountains stood in great numbers, and steep ridges crisscrossed the area. It had always been difficult for carriages to travel, so ordinary people usually used sleds. Who would have thought that one day he would actually take a boat? Why would he need a boat? How would these people know how the ship was made? He busied himself for half a day, but still couldn't get it up. Then he saw that someone had already gone into the water. Everyone looked over and saw that those guys were spinning on the surface of the water like a top, unable to move an inch forward. He couldn't help but burst into laughter. These people had shaved off one side of the big tree, removed all the branches, and dug a hole in the trunk of the big tree. The three of them sat on it, one in the middle and two at the two ends, each holding a branch and paddling. But after a while, relying on their high cultivation, they actually only spun on the surface of the water for more than 100 rounds before adjusting their direction and rushing out. They actually swayed in the wind and waves, twisting and turning like penguins as they floated out. Fuck. This was really a good idea. Just now, everyone was still laughing at them when they saw them spinning in circles. But now, it seemed that they really had foresight. In such a godforsaken place, how could there be any boats? So everyone followed suit. Almost in an instant, all the big trees at the side were chopped down. There were even people who started fighting over a big tree, and the fight was in full swing. The people on the surface of the water were all spinning in circles, and it was extremely crowded. Sometimes, with a bang, two tree boats would collide with each other as they spun, and people on both sides would fall into the water at the same time. Then, the people at the side would either intentionally or unintentionally use the oars made of tree branches to hit them on the head. What a joke! A phoenix would never land on a land without treasures. What's more, this was the birth of a phoenix. There would definitely be countless treasures. With such a good opportunity, how could they not take advantage of it and eliminate their competitors in advance? How could they leave it to harm themselves in the future? So the sounds of beating and scolding rang out continuously. There was a commotion, and a few more tree boats rushed out, swaying and drifting far away. Then more and more people went out. The most tragic ones were the few supreme martial artists who wanted to rely on their high cultivation to cross the water. They flew up elegantly, floating in a kind of elegant posture, and were about to rush out fiercely. But just as they flew up, a huge pressure came down on them. The few supreme martial artists instantly lost all their strength and fell down like dumplings, landing on their backs in a sorry state. The most impressive thing was that one of the supreme martial artists actually fell to the ground and had a nosebleed. This was really too embarrassing. One must know that this was the legend of the heavens. A supreme martial artist. Although he was only a first-grade supreme martial artist, he was still a legendary figure. Not to mention falling. Even if a big hammer smashed his nose, it would only make a hole in his nose. Now he actually fell from a place that wasn't very high, and even his nose was bleeding. Heavy rain poured down, and the supreme martial artist's blood flowed down. He reached out to touch his face, and his face was covered in blood. Everyone wanted to laugh, but no one dared to. The few supreme martial artists climbed up with dusty faces, only to find that after landing, their cultivation had returned. They couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that they could only row the boats on the ice island. Dong Wuxiang and Emole felt that they could move again and jumped up. Dong Wuxiang didn't care about how much his cultivation had increased. He went to Rui Budong's side in one step, and looked at him worriedly. He saw that Rui Budong's face was rosy, lying there, his chest rising and falling slowly. He was indeed fine. Such a fierce fire burned the sky red. But Rui Budong's clothes didn't burn at all. Dong Wuxiang was still in disbelief. He reached out a trembling hand to feel Rui Budong's breath. At this moment Rui Budong, who was lying on the ground, actually opened his eyes. Dong Wuxiang actually got a shock. Rui Budong opened his eyes, closed them, and then opened them again. He blinked and his pupils gradually focused. He actually gave a vulgar smile, and his first sentence was actually, "Old Fourth, you're scared out of your wits, aren't you?" Dong Wuxiang stood there in a daze, unable to react for a long time. He blinked and suddenly, tears fell crazily. Then, without any hesitation, he punched Rui Budong's left eye hard. Poof! A panda eye was born immediately. Rui Budong was in great pain. "Fuck you." Before he finished speaking, Dong Wuxiang's second punch had already come over mercilessly. Poof! Rui Budong completely transformed into a panda. Dong Wuxiang's punches were powerful and heavy. Without saying a word, he gritted his teeth and puffed up his cheeks as he punched again and again. Rui Budong was finally enraged. He flipped over and got up. The two of them took turns punching each other. Not long after, two brand new pig heads were born. He lay on the ice, panting heavily. Until now no one spoke. After a long time, Rui Budong moaned. "Does it feel good?" Dong Wuxiang panted. "Yes. I feel very good too," Rui Budong said. The two of them stopped talking, and just panted. After a while, they suddenly burst into laughter in unison. Those who had died once didn't have the surprise of coming back from the dead. Those who had been crying in regret also didn't say anything about their brothers coming back from the dead. Everything was as usual. It was as if this incident had never happened before. Emma watched from the side. She had always felt that she was a genius and could understand everything. Moreover, she could also feel and understand friendship. But at this moment, she felt that she understood men less and less. The friendship between men was indeed very strange. Something happened to Rui Budong, and Dong Wuxiang was devastated. This was very easy to understand. But Rui Budong came back from the dead. Yet Dong Wuxiang didn't seem very moved. Emma felt that if it were a woman, they would probably be hugging each other and crying right now. But these two men actually fought fiercely without protecting each other. After beating each other into a pig's head, everything would be over? After the laughter, Rui Budong said in a low voice, "Actually, I don't know about this either." Dong Wuxiang lay on the ground, stroking the wounds on his face contentedly, the corners of his mouth twitching in pain. "I understand." "Okay." Rui Budong didn't say anything either. Both of them were checking their own cultivation. Such an important matter, and they didn't mention it again. "I've improved," Rui Budong said. "I'm afraid I've already reached the first or second stage of the saint level." "Me too. It's about the same. But I still need to practice the saber and increase my understanding of the way of the saber before I can reach the level of a saber saint. This will still take a long time," Dong Wuxiang said lightly. "I've improved too." Emma checked herself in surprise. "Huh." Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong looked at her in shock. "You gave birth too? Where? Is it a boy or a girl?" Emma reacted instantly. Embarrassed and angry, she put her hands on her waist. "You two bastards." Rui Budong laughed loudly. "You didn't give birth to us two bastards. It's not nice of you to say that. It doesn't matter to me. If you gave birth to me, then so be it. I can call you mother now, but not Fourth. If Fourth calls you mother, you won't be able to get married." Emma's face and ears turned red. She went forward to beat this guy up. But Rui Budong actually leaned forward. "Mother, I'm hungry. I want to drink milk." Before he finished, he was beaten half to death by Dong Wuxiang and Emma. He lay on the ice and couldn't do anything other than moan. The three of them looked at each other and laughed. Emma had also advanced to the saint level. The three of them were of the same level. This proved one thing. In the Nirvana flame just now, Rui Budong had shared all the benefits that should have been his alone with Dong Wuxiang and Emma. He could have gone all the way to the supreme level, Because he had the phoenix physique, all the benefits were tailor-made for him. Not only would it be a waste for Dong Wuxiang and Mo, it wouldn't achieve the best results. But he still did it. When Rui Butong came back from the dead, he only said, "I don't know either." And that was it. Dong Wuxiang didn't ask either. He used the Nirvana flame to share all the benefits equally with Dong Wuxiang and Mo. This kind of friendship was enough to move heaven and earth. But Dong Wuxiang didn't say it either. Not only did he not say it, but he also didn't allow Mo to say it either. This matter, if it was said, would be lighter. If this kind of sacrifice was said verbally, it would really be an insult to feelings. Today's writing was especially slow. Haha, you should also understand how I feel. My 3 years of hard work will come to an end tonight. Treat it as a gift for myself next month, and also a gift for Pride's anniversary. As for why I'm giving it to myself, let's talk about it after the monthly votes battle today. Everyone is persuading me to write 10 chapters. I also want to write 10 chapters. I know better than anyone that if I write 10 chapters today, it will be an assured victory. But I really can't do it anymore. This month, I've almost broken myself. Even if I die, I can't write anymore. How about this? I'll still write 10 chapters today. No matter who comes in first or second, this is a promise. I'll write double the chapters next month. My heart is beating like a drum now. I'm sweating all over, and even my fingers are trembling. I don't know if I can write the 3rd and 4th chapters. If there are 3 chapters, I'll owe 7 chapters. I'll write 14 chapters next month. If there are 4 chapters, I'll owe 12 chapters. If there are only 2 chapters, I'll write 10 chapters next month. Victory or defeat depends on this battle. A victory is a victory, a defeat is a defeat. If I win, I have to win fair and square. If I lose, I have to lose in a soul-stirring manner. No matter if I win or lose, I can take it. Maybe I'll cry if I win, but if I lose, I can still laugh. Because I'm the one who rules the world. I'll fight with all my might. Chapter 956. Noises could be heard from afar. The 3 of them looked back and saw huge trees riding the wind and waves toward them. It had to be said that these martial arts experts were really good at understanding things. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become experts. Now they were riding the hollow tree trunks without sails, and were actually in high spirits. They were like huge sea cucumbers, but could move forward at the speed of a barracuda. But upon closer look, they knew that these people weren't rowing boats at all. They were obviously riding the tree, a boat in the way of a sled. Rui Butong, Dong Wuxiang and Mo were all dumbfounded. The 3 of them thought that they were experienced and knowledgeable, but this was the first time they had seen such a strange scene. The wisdom of the people is endless. Dong Wuxiang murmured. I've proven this sentence once again. Rui Butong said. Yes, look at them. How lively. They're really like a group of children playing with water. Mo trembled. Indeed, these martial arts experts, who were mostly white-haired and bearded, had all kinds of strange postures when they rowed the boat. The shape of the boat could also be said to be colorful. Especially on one boat, the 2 people were actually leaning to the left. At the same time, they rowed to the left, and the tree boat tilted to the left. Then, the 2 of them hurriedly rowed to the right, and the tree boat tilted to the right again. The surrounding tree boats all stayed far away from the 2 of them, fearing that they would bump into them. However, these 2 experts had actually used such a method to barge their way through. They were like giant crabs, and they had actually reached the depths of the ocean. What a freaking weirdo, Rui Butong murmured to himself. Phoenixes don't land on places without treasures. The birth of phoenixes must be full of treasures. These people are here to look for treasures or little phoenixes. Mo looked at Rui Butong with some worry. Rui Butong shrugged and said indifferently, the phoenixes have already left. They're looking for the phoenixes, not me. What does that have to do with anything? Besides, do I look like a phoenix to you? Have you seen a phoenix as handsome as me? Dong Wuxiang couldn't help bursting into laughter. Tan Tan is much more handsome than you. Rui Butong tightly knitted his brows. He then angrily said, you're comparing Tan Tan's appearance with mine. You're raping my personality. You're profaning my temperament. How dare you taint my demeanor? Molesting my purity. You're defiling me to death. Dong Wuxiang burst into laughter. What should we do next? Rui Butong said. Fourth brother, you haven't heard of this before. This medicine is requested by the Song clan, a subordinate clan of the Li clan, so that the pharmacists can participate in the medicine banquet. What is this medicine banquet? Dong Wuxiang blinked. You're also very interested? I'm doing this for your sake, fourth brother. You want to hone your saber. What's the point of honing your saber in such a remote place? Rui Butong snickered. Let's go to the medicine banquet. I heard that the heroes of the world will gather there. Martial emperors are like ants, martial monarchs are like sand, martial saints are like dogs, and supreme martial artists are like mountains. He patted Dong Wuxiang's shoulder and said, Fourth brother, once we beat everyone there, we'll be invincible. Dong Wuxiang's eyes suddenly shone brightly. He murmured, Once we beat everyone there, we'll be invincible? Emole was so nervous that her face turned pale. She knew that Rui Butong might be joking, but Dong Wuxiang's murmuring was definitely not a joke. It was definitely not a joke. He really wanted to beat everyone there to the ground. But before he could do that, Dong Wuxiang himself didn't know how many times he would have to go down, and how many times he would have to die. She was just about to stop him when she heard Dong Wuxiang laugh heartily. He said, Since that's the case, after we hand in the mission this time, we'll directly get another mission to go to the medicine banquet. Let's beat them all down. Rui Butong burst into laughter. And me. Both of you are crazy. Emole muttered and cursed anxiously. But not only was she influenced by the fighting spirit of the two brothers, her eyes also shone brightly. How could the young black devil be willing to be ordinary? In the past, because of the limitation of her abilities, and because of her unstable relationship with Dong Wuxiang, Emole had always been blocked by Dong Wuxiang and Rui Butong. She was willing to be a little woman behind her man's back, and take charge of all the trivial matters. But now that her man had such lofty ambitions, how could she, his woman, just watch him do nothing? If you want to be a hero of Lingtian, then of course I also want to be a matchless beauty. Only then can I be worthy of you. When I'm by your side, I want you to be proud of me. In a thatched hut in the middle of a forest, a man dressed like a scholar was in front of the hut, drinking tea leisurely and contentedly. His expression was very indifferent, as if he didn't care about anything. His whole person exuded a natural and unrestrained aura. Once one saw him, they would immediately feel that the sky was high and the clouds were light, as if everything was drifting away like a breeze. After drinking a cup of tea, he stood up slowly. After taking 2 steps, he muttered, Medicine banquet, should I go or not? Casually catching a piece of red that drifted over, he smiled warmly. Of course you should go. Because Chuchen is going. And so are the people from the Yi clan. He smiled and floated up like a cloud. He floated down the mountain like this, not looking back. Before he made a decision, he would pass his days here peacefully. But once he made a decision, he would set off immediately without any hesitation. He would follow his heart, and do whatever he wanted. This was for transcendence. When the sky changed, Chu Yang was still 500 miles away from the headquarters of the Zhuge clan. It was noon. Chu Yang and Ling Hanwu were talking. Chu Le was sleeping soundly on Zi Xieching's body. Zi Xieching and Ling Hanxue, this pair of ice beauties, were also talking in their unique way. Suddenly, they felt the spiritual energy of heaven and earth go berserk. The few of them were shocked. When they went out together and stood at the highest point, they realized that there were already many people looking up. Everyone was speechless when they saw the various strange scenes that appeared in the sky. When they came up, they didn't know that this strange phenomenon would actually last for such a long time. They actually stood there for a few days. Until the end, no one spoke. When the yellow, green, red and black aura dissipated, and the heavy rain poured down, everyone was completely drenched. Only then did they return to their rooms somewhat absent-mindedly. Chu Yang frowned along the way. Others had already entered their rooms, but he was still strolling alone in the rain. This strange phenomenon was definitely not the sort of calamity, and he hadn't seen it before. But why did those few auras feel so intimate and familiar to him? That beam of black light definitely had an aura of evil, but strangely, it also had an aura of righteousness. The evil aura was filled with complicated familiarity and intimacy. At that moment, Chu Yang even thought of his own junior brother Tan Tan. It was so complicated. They should have the same personality, but they were so opposite to each other, each walking on two extremes. Wasn't it just like Tan Tan? In everyone's eyes he was extremely ugly, but he himself was extremely narcissistic. You clearly value your relationship to the point of death, but you force yourself to act as if you don't care. You clearly use extremely evil means, but you do righteous things. Yet you use a kind of honorable means to achieve your wretched goals. Damn it! Chu Yang shook his head and smiled bitterly. As he shook his head, the rainwater scattered from his face into the curtain of rain. And that mysterious green light also felt familiar to Chu Yang. Even that pressure that appeared at that time reminded Chu Yang of the atmosphere he felt when he was in Duke Yu's secret place of the elves. Chu Yang felt even more familiar with the red light. The moment the red light rushed up, it reminded Chu Yang of Rui Budong's aura when he broke through in the far north wastelands and was reborn. And the phoenix that soared up afterwards made Chu Yang even more certain. This red light was most likely related to Rui Butong, because Rui Butong was now in the upper three heavens. As for the image of the golden dragon, Chu Yang thought of Ao Shiyun. He knew that Ao Shiyun had the bloodline of the dragon race. Could it be related? But then Chu Yang smiled bitterly and thought, if the heaven and earth phenomena that appeared at the same time were all related to his brother, then wouldn't it be a little too wishful thinking? Inside, the people of the Ling clan were already in a heated discussion. Chu Yang stood alone in the rain, deep in thought. The only one who noticed him was Zi Xiecheng. Even Ling Hanwu was also excitedly participating in the discussion. After all, every time such a situation happened, it meant that the world was about to change. I dare to bet that the Tribulation Sword Master has definitely found the fifth fragment of the Tribulation Sword. A martial saint expert of the Ling clan said confidently. If it can be proven otherwise, I will strip naked and go out for a run. Che. Everyone despised him. Prove. Do you know who the Tribulation Sword Master is? Chu Yang stood in the rain and looked at the Ling clan's discussion. At this moment, he actually felt that this lively atmosphere was very far away from him. It was so far away that it was like a dream, and he was living in another dream. I really don't want to think of all of you. Chu Yang murmured. Thinking of all of you, I miss all of you too much. What did you think of? Zi Xiecheng's voice sounded beside him. Chu Yang looked over and saw that Zi Xiecheng was already standing in the rain in front of him. The rain poured down from the sky. Zi Xiecheng stood in the rain, and the raindrops seemed to be hitting her body. But only when one was closer would one know that these raindrops didn't hit her body at all. There was not a speck of dust on her body, and she was not wet at all. I thought of something. Chu Yang woke up from his daze and said, Lure is asleep. Yes. I'll let her have a good sleep. Zi Xiecheng said lightly. This kind of heavy rain, in a sense, is a cleansing by the heavens. Therefore, sleeping at this time is the best for one's spirit. Chu Yang nodded lightly. He thought that Zi Xiecheng was a 10,000-year-old monster, and had seen a lot. She might be able to tell the reason for the strange scene. He couldn't help but ask, What about you? What did you think of? It was a little late. After being tortured by the angels in white for half the morning and afternoon, he only returned from the hospital after 5 o'clock. Of course there were some problems, but it was definitely nothing serious. After this chapter is posted, the next chapter will be very late. I want to write a thank you letter for August, and post it on the related page. That's free. Brothers, you can all come and take a look. No matter if you're the original author, or someone from Tieba, come and take a look. You can also help me increase some clicks. Who knows, your name might be in it. Of course, you can also transfer it away. Yes, I'll say one more thing. Asking for guaranteed monthly votes. Of course, the most important thing is that I ask those who like Pride but haven't subscribed to it. Please go to the net and increase the number of subscriptions for Pride. One chapter is just a few cents. I'll stretch out my hand and ask for this few cents from everyone. Think about it, brother. You can buy Piercing Winds all-night writing for a few cents. Isn't it worth it? Haha. Actually, my main purpose is to increase the number of subscriptions. Because we pride. Still want to fight. Because although we pride, have no regrets and have a clear conscience, we are still shaken. As long as everyone's subscriptions give me confidence, then in the near future, we pride will reach the top in one go. Do you want to leave your name in pride's most glorious moment? Do you want to be a brother of pride with me? Come. There are more than 1,000 brothers waiting for you here. Pride's unity, pride's waiting, do you see it? Are you willing to integrate into such a harmonious environment? Chapter 957. Zi Xiecheng smiled and said, You don't know? Chu Yang took a breath and said, I'm not sure. Zi Xiecheng said lightly, Actually, you've already confirmed it, but you still need me to say it together. She looked up at Chu Yang. Actually, it's really not necessary. You've already confirmed it. Chu Yang looked up. The rain from the sky splashed on his face. He said softly, I miss it so much. Zi Xiecheng nodded lightly and didn't ask anything. She just changed the topic and asked, Chu Yang, in your heart, is the woman you love more important? Or is your brother more important? Chu Yang was stunned. How should I evaluate this? Zi Xiecheng said lightly, If there's a battle where the woman you love and your brother face certain death at the same time, and you can only save one, which one will you save? Chu Yang said without hesitation, I'll save whichever I see first. What if I see them at the same time? Zi Xiecheng pursued. I'll save whoever is closest to me. Chu Yang felt that it was ridiculous. Is there a need to ask such a question? What if I give you time to choose? Zi Xiecheng asked. Let you weigh the pros and cons in your heart. Chu Yang frowned. This is purely unreasonable. If I have time to weigh the pros and cons, I'll definitely have time to save both of them. What's the point of weighing the pros and cons? What if there's only one choice? Zi Xiecheng asked. To hell with the choice. Chu Yang said rudely. There's no choice. There's no choice. I say, what are you women thinking in your heads? Aren't you tired of thinking about such boring questions every day? Some women ask men every day, between me and your mother, who will you save? It's so boring. Chu Yang said angrily. Zi Xiecheng said lightly. Actually, women like to ask such questions to prove their position in men's hearts. Chu Yang laughed mischievously. Forcing a man to make a choice, fuck. Women who force men to make choices should all get lost. This question should be answered like this. You wait patiently until you have a son. When your son's wife asks him this question, then you'll hear the standard answer. Zi Xiecheng smiled. Then are you sure now? Zi Xiecheng asked softly. Chu Yang was startled for a moment before he burst into laughter. There were some things in his heart that he was certain of, but he was still half convinced. At this time, he needed the affirmation of others. The affirmation of others could turn your 50% confidence into 10% confidence. However, even if other people's affirmation is correct, you are still influenced by others. You didn't defeat yourself alone. Instead, she was defeated by someone else. Therefore, you only need to say to yourself, my affirmation is your decision. That would do. This was also an inner demon. Moreover, it was an inner demon that everyone had, regardless of whether they were ordinary people or supreme being experts. Is your father more important, or your mother more important? Is your wife more important, or your child more important? Is your brother more important, or your wife more important? There would never be an answer. If he forced himself to make a choice, it would really cause him to collapse. No one was willing to make such a choice. Zi Xiecheng had forced Chu Yang into a dead end with a choice that could not satisfy both sides. Then at the crucial moment she had broken through. His words had defeated Chu Yang's inner demons. Chu Yang laughed self-deprecatingly and said, It turns out that my character is still somewhat indecisive. Everyone will hesitate. Zi Xiecheng said. It just depends on the speed of the decision. Chu Yang nodded slowly. The two of them stood in the rain for a while and slowly walked back. Unlike before, Chu Yang's heart was full of fire now. Those must be my brothers. Although I have no evidence. But other than them, no one else can give me such a sense of familiarity and intimacy. I'm waiting for you. I'm looking forward to you. Brothers, quickly come up. The heavens are ours. Chu Yang's face was a little red and he moved. Walking into the room, Ling Hanxue and the rest were all stunned. In their eyes, Chu Yang, who was more powerful, was like a drowned rat, while Zi Xieching was actually not wet at all. This was not right. No matter how much Chu Yang protected Zi Xieching, it would not be Chu Yang who was drenched while Zi Xieching was fine. If Chu Yang used his martial arts, it would naturally be possible. But in the current situation, he obviously did not. This discovery made the hearts of Ling Hanwu and the three supreme martial artist elders jump. Including them, all they saw was that Zi Xieching was just an ordinary girl with no cultivation at all. However, the current facts could only prove one thing. They were all wrong. This peerlessly beautiful woman was definitely an unfathomable expert, because they could not see through her cultivation at all. No wonder Chu Yang dared to bring two girls alone and travel tens of thousands of miles. With such a terrifying expert by his side, what was there to be afraid of? Zi Xieching smiled lightly, greeted them and entered her and Chu Luer's room. Chu Yang was a little puzzled. He scratched his head. Zi Xieching was obviously doing this on purpose. He had intentionally used such a subtle method to intimidate the Ling family. Why? Chu Yang looked at Ling Hanwu with a scrutinizing gaze. Ling Hanwu also frowned and started to think. His gaze slowly moved and swept past a thin and weak young man at the innermost part of the group. That young man raised his head and lowered it again. His face was pale, and he looked a little thin and weak, somewhat pitiful. However, Chu Yang knew that this was definitely caused by his martial arts, and not his weak body. And this young man was also the one with the weakest cultivation in the Ling clan group. He was not even at the emperor level. Ling Hanwu and Ling Hanxue had also never introduced him to Chu Yang. Ling Hanwu frowned and moved his gaze away from his face. Then he looked at the few martial saint and supreme martial artist experts with a sharp gaze. Under his sharp gaze, three people's expressions changed slightly, and they avoided his gaze. Ling Hanwu snorted heavily and muttered to himself, "Bastard! You've embarrassed yourself all the way to the south." Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, "Who is this duke?" "This is my nephew. I brought him here to broaden his horizons," Ling Hanwu said somewhat embarrassedly. "Your nephew is really handsome and promising at a young age. Outstanding, elegant, talented," Chu Yang said with a smile full of deep meaning. Chu Yang purposely emphasized the word heroic and the word romantic, and dragged out his intonation. Ling Hanwu blushed and said, "Young brother is really clever. However, some things will definitely not happen." Chu Yang smiled gently and said, "I believe you." Then he said, "It's raining, I'm going to take a nap." Then he turned and left. The moment he stepped out of the door, that thin and weak young man suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Yang's back with jealousy in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.